You guys know I like to start at the deep end of the pool on these issues. And someone in the audience was asking if this is going to be shallow or this is going to be deep. It's shallow and it's deep at the same damn time, people. I want you to imagine, and it is not going to be all that difficult for you to picture this in your mind's eye, regardless of where it is in the world you grew up, who it is you grew up with, what kind of family background you have. Imagine you live in a society that is 99% Muslim and you are an atheist. That's the situation. You are profoundly alienated from 99% of people. And you reach a point in your life where you realize that you are going to be hashtag forever alone. Now, a lot of people on Reddit, a lot of people on YouTube, a lot of people on Instagram, a lot of people who identify as hashtag forever alone, they are at least as alienated from their own society, at least as alienated from their own members of their family, and perhaps more so than someone who is an atheist living in a Muslim majority society. Flesh it out for just half a second here. If you're an atheist, you may have perfectly pleasant and cordial relations at work with people who are devout Muslims. It may not be a problem for you every day in every way. You may be able to get along with and cooperate with colleagues at school, colleagues at work, the person you buy your groceries from. I've lived in parts of the world where I'm buying my groceries from people who are Muslim. You have a little bit of chit chat, a little bit of social interaction, but in every important way, you are going to be forever alone. Now, some of you will say, nobody in my audience is going to say this, but someone hypothetically might say, oh, well, there's still that 1%. You're not alone. There are a few other atheists. There are a few other people who share your values. And you can make the effort to go out and meet them, which is true. Even if you're living in a country like Iran, even if you're living in one of these societies that's 99% Muslim, you can go to conferences and events for other dissident intellectuals. You can meet other atheists one way or another. And you are going to have the more or less soul-crushing experience of realizing that even though you have this one thing in common with them, you have nothing else in common with them, that you're not compatible as friends. And there's only, maybe fewer than 1% of people have this in common with you. You can meet other people who are atheists, and guess what? They're 30 years older than you. Like, even if it was someone who in some other universe, if you'd been the same age, you could have had a relationship. Well, you're not. And by the way, that's happened to me. I remember one woman, I'm not going to say who this is, but she was about 65 and I was maybe 25. And I thought, just on an intellectual level, she was someone who had a lot in common with me. I was thinking, I thought, could I make this work? I wasn't really attracted to her, but I thought, yeah, you could meet someone else you're compatible with, you have something in common with, but they are just too old for you. You're born of the wrong generation. You meet someone else you have these things in common with, but they smoke cigarettes and you don't smoke cigarettes, but they eat meat. And you know what you're going to find the vast majority of the time? You meet someone and you have these things in common with them that alienate you from the rest of society, but they're already married. Well, guess what? The vast majority of those people, there's 1% of people out there who have something in common with you, but they're already married. So guess what? You're hashtag forever alone. There are all these people who are profoundly alienated from the culture and the political circumstances they're born into, and they come on the internet to bemoan the fact that they are forever alone. Now, as I warned you, I like to start at the deep end of the pool. Some people might jump in this audience now and say, no, that's not the problem. The problem isn't intellectual. The problem isn't ethical. The problem isn't this. The problem isn't that. The problem is just that they're ugly. Well, I got news for you. There are a lot of ugly people in this world. And there are a lot of people who can accept your ugliness. It's much easier to get used to and sit down and have a cup of coffee with someone who just happens to be physically ugly. The shape of their face, as it turns out, is kind of unpleasant, or the shape of their body. I admit there is a prejudice in our society. When you first meet someone, your first impression of someone, whether it's a coworker or a friend or what have you, that, okay, it may be a little bit hard to look at them. There are people who are that ugly where it's a little bit disconcerting, but you get used to it and you get along and you learn to appreciate that person. So, ugliness, it's common. It's easy for people to accept, and it's easy for people to overcome. And if you are an ugly person and you are willing to be in relationships with other ugly people, whether that's friendship, love, marriage, as long as you're willing to accept someone else ugly, it's not really that much a problem. You know what you can't accept? If you're an atheist, you can't accept being with someone who's Muslim. And if you're Muslim, you can't accept being with someone who's an atheist. And again, just to put a human face on it, just to put it in a scenario that you guys can immediately relate to and visualize and understand. There are parents who remain devoutly Muslim, and they can never accept it. They can never get over it. They can never sit down and eat lunch with their own children because their children have rejected their religion and become atheists. Like maybe for a very brief phone call, they can do an update where they said, oh yeah, okay, how are you doing? Is everything okay? And that is about it. There's a visceral incompatibility. There's a hatred. There's a resentment. And it happens the other way around too. It's not as common, but you can have atheist parents, secular, modern atheist parents, and their children become Muslim fundamentalists. And the parents are taken aback. The parents can't accept it. And again, maybe they can have a brief update by phone, but you can't sit down and, eat lunch together. You can't really share your lives together. You can't have that closeness, that cooperation. There's this sense in which you're mutually alienated. And look, I get fan mail, I get hate mail, I get people challenging my views, which is great. I'm happy to hear it, happy to interact with the audience that way. I'm happy for you guys to join in right now. When I talk about the problem of video game addiction and the way video game playing is changing our culture, I had people writing in and talking to me and challenging me and saying, well, isn't it the case that the same problem could arise just through someone being addicted to coloring books, adult coloring books? They challenge me and say, well, you're picking out this particular problem, but isn't it just one example out of many of all kinds of problems? Okay, no. The culture of playing video games, the way in which the internet changes civilization, the way in which computer technology changes our civilization, the way in which video game addiction changes our civilization, that's a mass phenomenon on the scale of billions of people. A tiny percentage of people, not even a percentage, a few people on the whole earth may be addicted to coloring books. There are people get addicted to washing their hands. There are people get addicted to, I've read about this, people get addicted to eating earth, eating soil out of their garden. And they go in and get help from psychiatrists for it. That's why we know they exist, because it's a pretty affordable addiction. If you're addicted to eating soil, you can go out and buy a bag of dirt at the local garden center and you're set. There are these tiny numbers of people with these strange addictions, but we have to recognize when something's a mass phenomenon with tremendous social, cultural, and political significance. Video game addiction has this kind of significance, and it is partly linked to and partly, related to this phenomenon of forever alone. Now, speaking of the garden center, I would say this to you: if not everyone who's forever alone identifies with the hashtag. Not everyone goes to the Reddit group. Not everyone thinks this way. If you go to any garden center, I've always found this: when you meet and talk to people who are into gardening, a lot of them are forever alone. A lot, and they could be widows or widowers. They could be people who used to be married. They could be people who had a relationship earlier in their life, and now they've lost that. They've gotten divorced, or their partner died, or whatever. Obviously this isn't something completely new. The forever alone phenomenon has existed for centuries. It has been out there, but what percentage of people are at any given phase of their life struggling with the feeling of being forever alone? And it might turn out to be temporary. It might be you feel that you're forever alone for 10 years. And then at some point you meet someone and you move on, you start a new phase. It's possible it happens. But for what percentage of people in our society today is forever alone not just a sentiment, not just a sense of regret, something haunting them? It really does accurately and realistically describe their situation in life. You want to get on the mic, babe?
This is true.
Yeah, I like to start at the deep end of the pool.
Yeah.
As you know.
Well, I was just thinking about this prior to starting live stream. When I was a teenager, MySpace was popular.
Oh.
And there was somebody that I was too young to be interacting with, but nevertheless, I messaged them via MySpace and also AOL Instant Messenger. And that person, I of course, I was too young to really get involved with them romantically, but I was very much interested in them, and it was an affair that couldn't happen because my parents
Right.
forbid me. It was a forbidden relationship. So I used to, see his posts, what he would share to MySpace, and what he would post about often was his feelings of being forever alone.
Huh.
But he was somebody that was attractive, like people were interested in him. And
Yeah.
I remember this was my first introduction to seeing this hashtag forever alone
Right.
concept.
Right.
That this is somebody who ostensibly seems like an attractive person, he's a popular person, yet he's coming online and talking about his feelings of being forever alone. And I wondered, just to myself, what is this about? Like, what is this, obviously there are people interested in him. How is it so that he feels this way? And it's talked about in songs, where you feel alone in a crowded room. You are surrounded by people, but you still feel alone.
Yeah.
This was my first concept of seeing this, and I think we all have to understand and accept that we as individuals we are alone, and we have to not rely on other people to give us kind of egoic confirmation or affirmation of
Right.
who we are. We have to develop on our own, that at our core we are alone, but it's what we can bring into other people's lives
Right.
and what they bring into our
Well,
lives that make life interesting.
That's part of what makes Forever Alone interesting, is that I think for most people, it's an accurate analysis of something that's underlying their conditions in the here and now. Like, you may not, you know what I mean? You may have some level of gregariousness in your life, and yet you're still also dealing with this underlying problems of being forever alone.
Yeah. So I guess what else I wanted to say about that is that it's not that there weren't people that would have been interested in this person,
Right.
Or that wanted to have a relationship with him.
Mm-hmm.
It was that he wasn't willing to,
Right.
whether it's lower his standards or whether it was just what he expected out of a relationship. Like, he wasn't willing to put in that effort.
There was some alienation there. There was some there he couldn't have gone.
So is it that, is it an emotional thing that it is possible for these people who identify as hashtag forever alone,
Right,
that they could reach out to people, and they would have to make the effort to try to.
So
make a
I've got to
relationship.
jump in with a really important distinction here. There's a difference between being lonely and being alone. Like, if you are alone, it's an objectively real fact, and you may not feel lonely. You may not be unhappy about it. Like, you can be lonely and you can be alone. And I know this is going to sound ridiculous, but there are people like famous rock stars and celebrities who are lonely even though they're not alone. They're successful, they have fans, they have lovers, or they may sleep with groupies, they may sleep with prostitutes, they may have kind of shallow relationships, but there is still an important sense in which they're lonely, but not alone. I think part of what's important in this discussion is to indicate that we are talking about being alone. And then the whole challenge of the, /r forever alone subculture is, okay, what now? What do you do from here? Like, you can acknowledge to some extent, maybe it's something wrong with you. To some extent, it's something wrong with the society you live in. Like, it's something wrong with the majority of people,
right.
the culture, the context you happen to be born into. And that's why I think it's so useful to start with this example of, what if you are an atheist living in a culture where 99% of people are devout Muslims? This exists. All right. And so you are alone. Like, this is a reality. Now, you can blame yourself. Maybe sometimes you do blame yourself. Like, maybe sometimes you do and sometimes you don't. Maybe sometimes you think, oh, if only I could lower my standards, if only I could conform, if only I could integrate, if only you could live a kind of double life where you pretend to be part of the religion and culture every time, then you wouldn't be so alone. But I'm just pointing out, we have to start with a recognition that we're talking about being alone, not being lonely. You can be married and be lonely. Is that even rare? A lot of you guys don't have friends with that. If you have friends who are middle-aged married people, you can be married and be lonely. You can have a job, like, let's say you're a hairdresser, working a hairdresser's salon, where every day you talk to people, your coworkers, your clients. There's a lot of talking, a lot of socialization, and you're lonely. You know what I mean? So being lonely, I do think, is different from being alone, and just in that sense. Now, look, whether it should be praised or blamed is one question. But I mean, you raised the issue of already. To what extent are these people alone because of choices they've made, or because of characteristics they've had, or their reluctance to assimilate into the culture they've been born into? And what I'm starting off by saying is, even if it's 100% their fault, like even if it's 100% their choice, their option, we're still not going to blame them for it. Like there's no point. Like there's no point in saying to an atheist, why can't you just assimilate into Muslim culture?
Why can't you just
Right. I
be a
can't. I can't.
Muslim
Right.
like everybody else?
Right.
And then
Right.
you'd have
Right.
friends, and then you'd
And-
have a lover, then
Look, you know,
these connections that are meaningful to you. Yeah.
right. And the ethical and intellectual estrangement there, right? Like the way in which a devout Muslim is going to regard me as an atheist, and the way I am going to regard a devout Muslim, the sense in which ethically we mutually reject each other, intellectually we mutually reject each other, right? Right now, 2021, 2022, if I get on an airplane and go to Banff, Alberta, Banff National Park, skiing resort, if I go to a skiing resort now, you guys may not be able to see it, but I reject those people and they reject me. There's actually a similar kind of mutual estrangement and incompatibility. And it runs just as deep as an atheist versus a Muslim, right? It's hard to accept that, hard to take that seriously, but I'm asking you to take it seriously. We were both laughing at, there's a YouTube channel called Bread Gang.
Yeah.
And the whole show is all they do is stand outside of nightclubs. Many nightclubs, there's a kind of area in front of the nightclub where people mill around and smoke cigarettes and chit chat, partly because it's too noisy inside the nightclub to talk to each other. They were just interviewing people who were in various stages of being drunk and high on drugs in Banff, Alberta, the same ski resort town. These are people on a ski vacation, spending a lot of money to be there, and they're going out and using cocaine and MDMA and other mindless drugs and alcohol and whatever. And by the way, some of these people are incredibly good looking, of course. I mean, like, this is whatever. This is Canada, and these people are all able-bodied enough to go skiing, and they're all wealthy enough to do this. There's some aesthetic level on which many of these people, or all of them, may be, appealing or attractive or enviable people, right? But I'm saying to you, if I go to that nightclub, if I go on that skiing vacation, whether or not you can see it, and I think most people can feel it, there really is a depth of antipathy, antagonism, mutual rejection. There's a sense in which I will be alone in that nightclub. I will be alone at that ski resort, and I will be alone if I relocate to Saudi Arabia, Iran, so on and so forth. Yeah. And that's not about feeling lonely. I may or not feel lonely. I'm saying to you in a more objective sense, I am alone.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about your own life a little bit? I'm sorry, because we don't have to, but I was starting by just framing it in that big sense.
No, I think that's good.
But yeah, one of the reasons I'm doing this is because I know a lot of viewers don't think of it that way. And I know you don't think of it that way. That's why we started talking about this a couple weeks ago or something came up. I was like, oh, no. Like, I've had big parts of my life where I was really alone. So yeah, you want to talk about your own aloneness?
Well,
I mean, intermittent aloneness.
I will quote Aizal Mazard. Something that you said to me was about relationships. At times in my relationship with Aizal, I have lamented that I don't have enough friends, or that I'm like looking for connections with people and not being able to find this. So in some sense, I am really lucky that I have Aizal, that we understand each other, and that I feel we have a really positive relationship because of the way that we relate to each other. So this is the quote that I'm getting at, like that relationships are a way of relating to one another. That, Aizal and I, we can really have this, we have this strong rapport. We're able to really relate to one another and share a lot with each other and
encourage each other. I think
and that's really like what you're reaching out for. So, if you have such a deep divide between people, what kind of relationship can you have? And do you really want to relate to that person? Do you want to make the effort to relate to somebody that you find morally, ethically despicable?
Someone you find repugnant, let's say. Go on. Yeah.
Or somebody that, if you're being really honest with each other, I mean, if somebody is of a different religious belief. They literally believe that when you die, you are not going to heaven, and
Yes. And that you're their enemy,
yeah,
religiously
in
and
this
politically. Yeah.
sense. So, what is the relationship when it's on that very fundamental basis? You're at odds with one another on that belief system, and yeah, that's I can imagine it would be extremely isolating and alienating to grow up Muslim or grow up in a
Right.
Muslim
Right.
society and
Right.
decide, no, I'm not a believer in this faith. And I wonder how
Right.
many people
And also
are
on a more shallow dated level, I don't care about doing the things you people do. Because, like, you know, there's the religion and the
Yeah.
philosophy, but there's also
Right.
just the daily activities, things like prayer and even the clothes you wear and stuff. I don't give a fuck about these accoutrements of the religion and culture that you people may obsess over. Yeah, go on. I'm just saying, because
That's okay, yeah.
it's not just a purely intellectual, philosophical thing. It's also what you do with your time. But yeah, go on.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Like
Yeah.
skiing, you know, go on. Yeah.
Yes. Well, what I was going to say is that I wonder how many people that live in those societies are not ironically, but consciously deciding to put on the same behaviors and perform as a Muslim, in their hearts not really believing in the religion, because they know that this is so fundamental to fitting in and having connections with people. So yeah, we were talking off camera about making the conscious decision to get involved with people who you are not connecting on this level, like
Right.
and deciding in what ways you can relate to them. If you are not going to be able to bridge that gap.
Let me ask you this, because again, like I want we can talk about the kind of universal, global generalizations, but I think it's worthwhile for both of us to talk about the significance of this in our own lives. We're both people who have dealt with and do deal with, and looking forward to the future, continue to deal with the forever alone, issue, the meme, if you like.
Yeah.
It's more than just a meme. Yeah. The Islamic example is very straightforward in a sense, in that if you go to high school and you already know you're an atheist, and you go to university and you already know you're an atheist, you can very easily visualize and touch and see the alienation between yourself and 99% of the people in the society. Right? Someone gave the example of being an atheist at a Catholic school. Yeah, you totally right. Okay, right. At what point, though, did you start feeling alone or perceive yourself alone compared to the other people you went to high school with, compared to the other people you went to university with? Because, like, from my perspective, around age 23, 24, I think you were still reflecting on that. Like, I remember you talking about some friends you still had some distant connection with, you'd known in university, and you were still kind of philosophizing about, like, gee, really, like you even really kind of hate this person. You know what I mean? Like, you were kind of admitting to yourself, I guess I've always hated her and she's really a terrible person. And you were still kind of feeling that out. But, like, to recognize yourself as alone and to recognize that alienation. I remember you talking about that, and, like, you reflecting on the extent to which your own roommates and your own friends in college, they wouldn't admit things to you and wouldn't discuss things with you that they did admit to their other friends. By the way, it was stuff like getting drunk and sleeping around, like there was this sense in which they really weren't treating you as a friend and weren't trusting you. And there was this alienation there. Yeah. So just say and look, maybe I'm wrong. I'm like, I don't know what she's going to say. I really don't. But do you think there was a point of recognizing the alienation? Do you think there was a point where that changed for you?
That's a good question.
Like today, here we are, 2021, 2022, the end of 2021. I know that today, when you look at the Facebook profiles of people you knew in high school or people you knew in university, people from your hometown generally, you think, wow, I have nothing in common with these people. I'm totally alienated. You know what I mean? You recognize that alienation right away. But there was a time when you didn't, and you recognize. We've talked about moving back to our hometown. We've talked about, like, living there, whether it's for 5 years or 10 years or forever. We've talked about the possibility of making that our home, and, like, you recognize now right away. Whoa, like, there is this profound alienation. If I go back there, I am going to be alone. I am not going to live my life with those people. They're not, Yeah. But the question I'm putting to you
Okay.
is, yeah. Do you
Okay.
think there was a turning point there? Do you think there was a recognition or something?
It's a good question because, yeah, so I was 22 years old when I became vegan. So veganism is something that like almost automatically alienates you from people that, you used to have respect for. Once you've introduced these topics to these people that you've known, these connections that you've had, and they are not receptive to it at all. That was a big source of alienation for me, because I thought that if they just knew what I knew, they would change their ways. They
Right.
would not be eating meat if they knew that this was what was going on. Um, so I think probably at that stage, that's when I started to feel more and more alienated from people. However,
Or maybe you recognized and analyzed and understood the alienation that was always there. Because no
yeah,
offense, I just have heard her talk. I think that it already was there. There was a sense in which you were alone or alone in the crowd. Going,
yes,
yeah.
thank you. Yeah,
I mean, you've said it to me a lot. Like you recognize other girls had best friends and close friendships, and you didn't. Like you philosophized about that a lot during the time we've been together. That there was this sense in which you were alone, and these people.
yeah, okay, all right.
Yeah,
Something
yeah,
that
yeah.
you've said to me is, if I'm going to be honest, I want to be all the way honest. And yeah, so I guess I'm introducing that as like, that is the time when I was able to really like conceptualize it and, pin it down on something, like, some behavior like eating meat. But even when I was younger, I was committed to sobriety, and I had, in high school, like I did feel alienated from other people because of that commitment, and because of, that I wasn't sleeping around. And that was when I started noticing that people were not like sharing with me what they were doing, because I don't know if they were worried about being judged by me, or whatever it was. So yeah, I'm not going to say that it just started with veganism, but that's
Right.
when I started really like parsing this in my mind, like what is this that's alienating me from people. um but yeah, no, I mean, I grew up with the influence that if it's possible, you should try to be friendly with people. You should try to,
Right.
find what could bind you, what could, bond you together, what common interests you share. And generally, I found it, you know, in order to be a polite person or whatever, like I did want to not really
Right.
be honest with myself that
But
I really hated people, or, like for
But
this
again,
reason.
cutting to the chase a little bit here, there's
Yeah.
a difference between being friendly and being your friend.
Yeah.
And that was the
True.
reality of your life. There were a lot of people you were friendly with, but they're not your friends.
Yeah.
And no, I mean, I'm not saying this to shame you or something, but I think you can reflect most of your life before you met me. I think it's fair to say you had no friends. You had a boyfriend who was in love with you and somewhat obsessive about you.
Yeah.
All everyone who's I've been in a relationship with was obsessive about me, by the way. I've had a lot of obsessive ex-girlfriends and whatever. So I'm not saying that in any very loaded way, but it's different. It's different being in a relationship with someone who doesn't particularly care about you or has a detached attitude than someone who's obsessive about you. I've that experience. I think you've had that experience too, being in a relationship with someone who's obsessive about you. But your boyfriend aside, I mean, I really think you wanted friendship, but there was this sense in which you were alone. And again, being friendly with people, being polite with people, that is not friendship. And just really briefly, you guys know I've lived in Thailand, I've lived in Laos, I lived in Cambodia. When you are yourself an emigre, when you are yourself an immigrant, a person living out of your own native language and cultural circumstances, you can see that distinction much more clearly. Like in my relationships with Thai people, Laotian people, Cambodian people, okay, this is someone who's friendly towards me. This is someone I have some level of cooperation with,
Yeah.
but they're not my friend. It's maybe easier to kid yourself when everyone's speaking the same language, and you're from the same culture or from the same neighborhood or from the same school.
Yeah. No,
Yeah,
that's a good point. Actually, that's
yeah,
something I hadn't really considered.
yeah.
The experience of living in China, and
Yes,
like just meeting with people who don't speak, who aren't from your same
yes.
town, like just from like your same community, same country. Like then you start to analyze relationships in a different way. That's yeah, I could say more about that, but I don't want that to be the main topic of the conversation here.
Yeah. So Sam Walsh comments, quote, despite differences with my friends, I focus on the ways I can connect with them. I think that's more productive than total isolation. I speak of our differences sometimes, but I can only do so much. This isn't a black and white problem. He says, quote, I don't cut my parents off despite our profound differences. I work with what I do have in common, but it does limit the relationship. Right. But okay, so Sam, I don't know your situation. You may or may not be alone, right? But that's what we're talking about in this video. There are some people, and obviously, almost everyone has parents. A few people were raised in an orphanage or an institution. The vast majority of us have parents. But you can have parents and be alone. You can have parents where the only conversation is, that short phone call where you check up. It's this very limited kind of, procedural relationship, oh, you're not in jail, you're not in the hospital, good. Like really, that's it. Are you poor, you need money, you got a problem, that's really about it. It's a very transactional relationship. And some people would really say they're not alone because they have a tremendously meaningful, close relationship with their parents. Now, I'm going to digress into something here that I knew I was going to talk about in this video. If you're looking at the Reddit group Forever Alone, or if you're listening to people complain about being alone, which, by the way, I support. I think if you've got a problem, it's a wonderful thing to be able to come on the internet and complain about it. You should come and make a YouTube video. Like, it's great. I do not think people who have this problem should shut up about it or silence themselves or something. No, talk about it, think about it, and maybe you can make progress. Maybe you can take a different attitude, different full self-confidence. Great. Now I've derailed my own train of thought.
Okay.
You want to jump in? You have something you want to say?
No, I was just waiting, but if it comes to you, let me know. But,
sorry.
yeah.
So this is Sam talking about cutting off his parents or not.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I guess I could, I could
Yeah.
expand upon that because, somebody who's listening in the audience might, I don't disagree with you. I think that is true that I've lacked friends, and there is a big difference between being friendly and having friends, or, what the meaning of friendship is. It's definitely something that I've dealt with my whole life, basically.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And you're going to deal with it in the future. I mean, whether better or worse. I mean, I obviously, I think your life has improved a lot. I think you're totally prepared now to go into the decade of your 30s much better prepared. But yeah. So what I was going to say is this: if you are reading, so I've reclaimed my train of thought, by the way. If you are reading the discourse that's on the Forever Alone Reddit group with these other public forums, it will occur to you a lot of these people dehumanize the other people in their lives. A lot of these people live in a very asymmetrical, unfair sort of way. I'm going to give a really shallow example first, then I'm going to get deeper. A lot of these people, for example, feel that they themselves are tremendously obese, they're unattractive and overweight, but they don't expect to be in a relationship with someone else who's also obese and overweight. They are living with the expectation, obviously a tragic expectation. They're aware it's a tragic expectation. They want to be loved by, desired by, have a relationship with someone who is slender and fit and athletic or very attractive. Now, obviously, we're all human. It's not hard to relate to that kind of asymmetry. Well, okay, that's a really shallow example. I think on a deeper level, part of what's going on is they don't just look at other people as other people. It's very hard to look at your own parents and think, well, these are just people. These are just people who happen to be my parents. You know what I mean? And then to evaluate them that way and evaluate the relationship that way. Like, okay, well, this is who my father is. This is who my mother is. What kind of relationship can I really have with them? And just think about the kind of guy he is. If he weren't my father, if she weren't my mother, would this person be my friend? Would any part of my life? For most of us, the answer is no. You don't have that much in common with your parents. They're people who happen to be your parents. And if you let yourself evaluate them as people, you'll understand that. Many of the people in the Forever Alone discourse, not all, many, in the same way that someone who's enormously fat may yearn for a relationship with someone who's in great shape, who's slender or athletic, without feeling that it's incumbent upon them to match that level of self-discipline and commitment to fitness. In the same way, there's this sense of going through life rejecting others for not living up to your standards, your intellectual standards, your ethical standards, whatever it is, while expecting unfairly that others aren't going to reject you in that same way. Seeing others in terms of the wish fulfillment fantasy, seeing others in terms of how you want them to make you feel or what role you want them to play in your life, nothing about it. Now, at the start of this video, my way of framing it very much excludes this train of thought. I was really saying, like, look, if you are an atheist living in a Muslim society, you have to understand it's reciprocal. The rejection is reciprocal. So, like, I'm an atheist. I'm not really comfortable being in this kind of relationship with someone who's a profound believer in the Muslim faith. But by the same token, I can understand their discomfort living with me, like having a close, intimate relationship. That reciprocal sense of fairness is very often missing from the Forever Alone discourse. And again, so to come closer to your experience, it might be very difficult for you back at age 22. She's 29 now, by the way. But like, let's say we travel back now. For you at age 22, for Melissa at age 22, to get on an airplane and go on a skiing vacation in Banff National Park, and for you to feel rejected and alienated and alone, it might be very difficult for you to say, yeah, you're damn right. Like, I reject these people. They're not good. And from their perspective, they reject me. That makes sense. I think for most people, that's incredibly hard to live with. It's incredibly hard to accept. And it's incredibly hard to think through in even a kind of fair and even-handed way. So again, putting a human face on it, I reject my parents. Many of you in the audience do too. All right. But it seems very hard for people to accept. And they also reject me. Like, I judge them, they judge me. And I judge them negatively, they judge me negatively. Your parents may be Muslim and you're an atheist. You're a vegan, your parents eat meat, whatever. Your parents are left-wing and you're right-wing. Whatever the sources of alienation are. Well, your father is just a guy. He's a human being who happens to be your parent. The person at the gym you have a crush on, or the person, your coworker, the person in the office you have a crush on, they are a person who just happens to be sexually attractive to you. Like, they're a person, right? But there's like their rejection of you, it's probably going to line up pretty well with your rejection of everyone in society generally. And God knows, I get it. You may feel like, hey, I'm so attracted to this person, I'm willing to overlook the fact that they're Muslim. I'm willing to overlook the fact that they smoke cigarettes. I'm willing to overlook the fact that they eat meat or they have a pet dog or whatever. There's things I don't like, but they're hot. So I'm like, wait, and they don't feel that way about you, right? That's not reciprocal. That's not mutual. But the sources of alienation are still there. The reasons why you're alone are still there. Yeah?
Yeah.
Now, look, you tell me. So, I mean, in your own life, do you feel there was some of that asymmetry there before you got involved with me? I'm not, you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. I definitely made a lot of sacrifices, but compromises with who I was involved with,
Right. But and then you're hoping other people will make those compromises for you, that your friendship is going to be rewarded in return.
Yeah, sure.
And yeah.
Yeah, I can. Thank you. Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, in your case, it is partly because you're so good looking. There have always been men wanting to be in relationships. You and I have talked about that. You really have never had a time in your life where there weren't men willing to, take the step and commit, or weren't trying to get in a relationship with you. Again, when you're 45, that may be different.
Yeah.
When you're 55, that may be different. But for you as a young woman in your teenage years and 20s, there have always been men willing to lay it down the way. But I think it is significant that when sex is taken out of the equation, the extent to which you did struggle with still the deep underlying issues of #Forever Alone, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, when I first mentioned this internet romance, my first, basically first crush and first real heartbreak, or feeling like, feeling that sense of heartbreak. That older boy, I don't know, I guess he was like 17 or 18 when I was 14. He was interested in me. He asked me, sexual questions. Like, he was interested in me, like, all the way. But he
was willing to. So if you were 14, he was willing to roll the dice and ended up in jail or something.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. I mean, it's a good thing. It's a good thing my parents intervened when I was having conversations with him on the phone at like 2 in the morning or whatever. But
I never did anything like that. Like, we're talking about when I was 17 or something. And I think partly like women my own age were already so immature. Like, I'm 17-year-old talking about other 17-year-olds, whatever. That like the thought of being around, like even just talking to someone who was even more immature was really
Yeah.
like I was struggling to have friendships with people my own age. But yeah, it would have been easier for me to be in friends with people older than me.
Right.
Not a brag, but come on, guys. But I was saying in terms of what life is like when you're 17, that never occurred to me. But I know a lot of guys are, and there are a lot of criminal charges and a lot of controversy on the internet. It is quite common for 17-year-old guys to be with a 15-year-old girl or 16-year, whatever, for there to be a little bit of an age gap. But at that stage, every year is a long time. It's a big difference in maturity and life experience and responsibility. The difference between being 19 and being 16, it is a big, at that stage, because people are so ignorant and so helpless.
Oh,
Anyway,
yeah.
it's a big deal. But anyway, but this guy was 18, 19, and he was willing
Yeah,
to get hands-on with a 14-year-old. All right. I believe that's an imprisonable offense, but anyway. Yeah. Go on, yeah.
Anyway, yeah, no, it's just despite that, I didn't
Right.
have the words for it. I did not conceptualize myself as,
Right.
you know, I'm
Right.
29 now, so I'm able to reflect on it and you know, realize what all the factors that were at play there. And, you know, like you say, the just being an attractive person, I guess, did influence. What did I mean, I don't know. I remember who I was at that time. Like I was me,
Yeah.
you know, I was Melissa.
Right,
like,
but let's be
like,
real. You were
what did I
still
know,
right.
you know?
You were still playing with dolls. You were still playing video games. At 14, I
was
know what it is.
certainly, yeah,
You know,
playing video
just
games.
being
Yep. So for sure, like, but it is still for me, like I still know the feeling of thinking that even if people are interested in you, it doesn't mean I'm interested in them. And
Right.
like, you know,
Right.
I did feel like I was making a compromise with my first relationship, that this was somebody that just wasn't compatible with me in a lot of ways. But I did still want to be in love with somebody, you know. I
Right.
did still want the experience, but it's like it comes back to the same idea. If you aren't able to relate on these very basic
Yes.
ways, like in ways that you find you know, that you have respect for the other person and that person respects you, and for like the same reasons, then what kind of relationship do you have? And once I realized that, like once I was able to be honest with myself, like I just couldn't believe that I'd let that relationship continue for so long and like pushed it and continued when it was incompatible the whole time, you know? So hopefully that makes sense. Somebody asked me, what do I mean with compromises? You know, like that's, are you going to pretend that you are okay with somebody doing drugs when you're really not? Are you?
Well, so
you know,
just to clarify a bit grammatically,
Yeah.
you make a compromise for something, right? Now, for many people,
Mhm.
they are making a compromise so that they're not alone. Like you don't want to be alone. So for the purpose of not being alone, for the purpose of, so for some people it's just sex. For some people it's love. For some people it's having children. Like, there are men who are homosexual, but they choose to pretend to be heterosexual so they can have children. All kinds of things. They make a compromise. But like, look, some people, it's very shallow. They're like, oh, this guy is too ugly or this woman is too ugly, but they are going to compromise so that they cannot be alone. For a lot of people, it's not physical characteristics, right? It's ethical characteristics, intellectual characteristics. This
Yeah.
person is not smart enough for me in some complex sense. This person is not good enough for me, but you decide to make a compromise for a reason. And the type of reason we're talking about here is the contrast between being forever alone and having some kind of relationship or group of relationships.
Yeah, that could be destructive in your life. It's better to be alone and not have like bad influence with somebody. Because
But most people don't feel that way, and you've been through that too, where you didn't feel that way. You didn't feel like, oh, I'd be better off being alone than making this compromise. No,
exactly. Right. If I had, then I wouldn't. Yeah.
Right, and I think as a young person, you were more ruled by instincts. Now I could generalize and say we all are, but maybe not everyone is. A lot of people are, where you're ruled by really animal instincts that include, again, instincts are not just sex. They're really not. They go beyond that. Wanting to feel safe, wanting to feel part of a community, wanting to feel part of a group. Like there were a lot of instincts involved here, but those animal instincts were probably gnawing away at you. It's not some purely.
Yeah, absolutely.
We got a very simple question here. When are you moving to LA? And it certainly relates to the topic of this video. One of the main reasons to live in LA is to try to be around other highly ambitious people, be around ambitious people, be around creative people, be around people who want to change the world. And both of us hope we live lives that are less alone in LA. I mean, I can look around this town. We live in Victoria, Canada currently. And yeah, there were like so many places called Victoria on planet Earth. I have to say Victoria. So there are a lot of towns named Victoria.
Right.
If we live the rest of our lives in Victoria, we're going to be totally alone. Even when you look within the subcategory of people who have something in common with us. So I'm going to come back to this. But really briefly, guys, I kind of meant to say this earlier and didn't. If you think I'm not alienated from this culture, I could start up Tinder right now on my phone. I don't think it's installed. I have to download and install it. But like if I start up the Tinder app and start paging through, like the degree of alienation between myself and other women my own age, I think Tinder wants to show you people in the same age bracket. It's unbelievable. Like, I could sit here and do a stand-up comedy routine. Oh yeah, look at this bitch. Here she is. And, women really photograph themselves, put themselves on Tinder with, the defining iconography of their life on camera. Here, one of the most popular things is for women to show themselves drinking alcohol and throwing an axe. It's a trend here in the Pacific Northwest, going axe throwing. You know what I mean? Like here is this woman with her dog, grilling steak, drinking alcohol. Like here are her hobbies, here are her interests in life, displayed for you in just a few pictures. Also there are people who make a display of what they're into in terms of pop culture. They show various things about their life, what it is that consumes their time and imagination. Well, I am really alienated from those people. And, it may be that I'm physically attracted to some of them, not many. And it may be that some of them are attracted to me. And again, guys, once you get past like 22, the vast majority of people you are attracted to are already married or are in a relationship that is tantamount to marriage, that is as serious as marriage. You can just be boyfriend and girlfriend, but it's serious. Like, are you willing to do that? Do you want to go break up someone else's relationship so you can have a swing at this? You can try, so you can have a swing at that, Anyway, yeah, I'm just saying when you talk about this kind of alienation and isolation and aloneness, if I go through Tinder, it tells you something. It tells you something about me. It tells you a lot about the culture I'm living in, the social, political context I'm living in. You get a fucking cross-section of the Canadian middle-aged mind leafing through Tinder. Now, this isn't the only cross-section I can take. I could sit here now and rant to you about the type of people I meet on the university campus at the University of Victoria, all ages. So that's like age 18 through 65, because there are elderly professors and people getting PhDs. PhD level students can be quite a bit older and so on. There are people who go back after dropping out, as middle-aged people. So not just talking about young people. I can sit here and, dish about the types of imbeciles I meet and interact with on the university campus. We're not going to do that. That's not the point of this. But yeah, it may not be as obvious as the difference between atheist and Muslim in a Muslim majority society. But yeah, I am alienated from the culture here. And, I reject those people and they reject me. The rejection is mutual. And in a city like Los Angeles, there's the possibility that there will be 5 people, 10 people, 50 people, that there will be some number of people that have enough in common with me, enough in common with Melissa, that they really share our lives in a meaningful way, and that we are not #forever alone. Living in LA involves terrible sacrifices. It is not paradise. And we've been to paradise. We've spent time in Thailand together. I've lived in Thailand more long-term than she has. I can still speak the Thai language. I'd have to work to brush it up. It's been so many years, but still, I have the fundamentals of Thai and Laotian as languages. And just imagine when I hear people speaking in Laotian on the news, watching news, it's really weird the way that part of your brain starts to wake up again. But anyway, in some ways, Thailand is paradise. In some ways, Laos is paradise. In some ways, the south of France is paradise. In some ways, Athens, Greece is paradise. Los Angeles is not paradise. But, you're willing to make that sacrifice. And this is a big part of it, so that you are not #forever alone. Speaking of which, guys, hit the thumbs up button if you can. We got 43 people in the audience, which is great. I appreciate you being here. I live stream with really no warning. But guys, if you change your mind later, you can undo the thumbs up button. But it'll help more people join the conversation now, and it also help people discover the video. So anyway, here's a flattering comment. Ari says Melissa is going to get a lot of attention in LA. Well, look, Melissa's a good-looking woman, but no, compared to being in China, when we were in Dehong, China, Melissa got a lot of attention. You were the beauty queen of Dahong, China. If we move to Japan, come on, people will be all over. People will be freaking out and want
Let's
to
just
take the
say
picture.
this. In Los Angeles, people are not going to stop their cars on the street and offer me a job teaching kids.
On the spot. Yeah. Oh, right. And if you'd been in a bigger city, people would have been offering you a job as a lounge singer or to work in a nightclub. There's that kind of work too. Oh, good-looking white woman. Yeah, they'd want to recruit you to be a beautiful woman working in a nightclub. You know what I mean? Whatever. Being the maitre d' or something. All that working in restaurants and stuff too. So I think what they want. Well, also doing modeling and acting. What were we going to say?
No, I was just going to say Los Angeles is a place where the most beautiful people go. So I doubt that.
Yes.
But
No. So
but thank you.
I remember. Yeah. Do you remember when we went down? So we've been to Los Angeles before. Do you remember we went down to the beach and there was that area where people were playing volleyball?
Yeah.
Like, holy shit, there were good-looking people playing volleyball, men and women. You're in LA on the beach,
play beach volleyball in Los Angeles. You have to be at a level of fitness that is not going to embarrass the other people.
Some of these were middle-aged women. Like, there were women who were 50 years old playing volleyball, but they were like the best looking. Like, these are 50-year-old where you go, wow, I didn't know that existed. So if Melissa is playing beach volleyball in Los Angeles, she does not stand out as an extremely good person, and you blend in. But no, if we went to Japan, I think Japan's a good example. Then sure, everyone's going to be fawning over you as a great beauty and so on. But in LA, no. I mean, I think, and another good example. So I've mentioned this before. I was invited to do work as an actor when I was in Kunming. I was going to say I didn't go to auditions. I went to one, actually. I auditioned for part in a movie once in Kunming. But anyway, I wasn't generally hunting it down. But I talked to some people in the movie industry there. So yes, someone like myself and someone like Melissa, if we were in China, if we were in Japan, if we were in South Korea, we probably would be offered acting roles right away. It's just a reasonably good-looking white person who can work a microphone. But but in LA, no. Yeah, I mean, competition is fierce. Anyway, you guys can go way back. I've talked about it on my channel for so many years. One of the most notorious videos on my channel is where I was saying this about Nina and Randa, my fellow YouTubers, Nina and Randa. It's like, look, if Nina and Randa go to an audition in Los Angeles, nobody thinks they're the most beautiful woman there. Nobody's going to make it easy for you. Now, that doesn't mean you can't win. Again, this is all about living a meaningful life, blah, blah, blah. But no. Yeah, if anything, the two of us will be uglier by LA standards.
Compared to Victoria here. Yeah,
but good looks only matter so much in life. I'm sure as hell. I never wake up and think I wish I was going to be a model in Los Angeles. It's not the way I want to compete in life. Not the kind of life I want to live. Sorry, just catching up with your comments, guys. Yeah.
Oh, I could talk about Bumble because I've used it for Bumble BFF, the friend finding app, the part of the app.
Well, but let me just say, so Bumble is partly a dating app and it's partly a friend finding app. But I do think that relates to our conversation here. I think when we moved to Victoria, both times, we moved here once and then we moved back again a few years later. I think there was a real question of to what extent are you going to be #forever alone, even though she has me. So she's together, but she has one great relationship in her life. But, and as I recall, when we moved back here, you really said this time you were going to make a big effort. The first time you did go to a couple events with me, both in Vancouver and in Victoria, where you kind of sort of could have made friends with people. But I think you recognized that one reason why you didn't have friends was that you weren't making that effort. You said, okay, this time I'm going to make the effort. And you signed up and did Bumble BFF, the friend finding app Bumble. Yeah.
Yes. I met about 3 or 4 women. And none of them
face to face.
Yeah,
there were more people you had messaged with, but face to face you met before.
Yeah, so actually meeting in person and having a conversation, which I felt all the conversations were good. I didn't feel I struggled with conversation with anybody, but it's I don't know if this is area specific or if it's Canada as a whole generally, but on almost all of the profiles that I see, they say, I know how hard it is to make friends as an adult, but Victoria especially.
Yes.
So there seems to be this idea that like in Victoria, this is
Right.
the sense I
Right.
get
And
from
then-
having scrolled through.
And then the sad thing is, the next thing they say is, who wants to meet up for drinks at the nightclub? Or who wants
Yes.
to?
Okay. So definitely somebody mostly
I'm
looking for
a crew of girls I can go to the nightclub with, get drunk and party. And there's a lot of that. Oh, go on. Yeah,
There's definitely a lot of that. A lot of
nerds also saying they want to smoke marijuana and play video games with people.
Yeah,
Someone to
there's
come
that,
over,
for
get
sure.
stoned. Go on. Yeah.
For sure, there's that. And also, I have a dog, and I want somebody to walk dogs with me or help me walk my dog. And yeah, it's just this past week, I went on Bumble BFF again, and yeah, it was definitely that, based on the cross section of what I saw. It's people who have relationships with their dog, basically, and then spend most of their time alone or working virtually.
And it reminds you of how alienated you are from the culture and from most people here, or perhaps everyone here.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely find the pet thing as being endemic to Western culture, is that, or I guess I should say at epidemic levels.
Well, look, you can correct me if I'm wrong, though. I think that your experience meeting those women face to face, the few women you did meet with through Bumble BFF, I disagree with me, want to, or take your direction.
Sure.
But I think it reminded you of the kind of threshold or the kind of barrier to entry of, am I really going to try to trust this person, let them into my life, share my life with them? And if so, what's in it for me and what's in it for them? Where there's this feeling of, okay, I know you, I've had coffee with you, but are we actually going to become friends? Am I mean, trust, I know trust is a loaded word, but like, it's not, okay, how many people do you tell how much you hate your own parents, your problems with your own parents? One of the reasons you don't tell other people that is because what's the point? Like, it's not even like you think, oh, if I tell them about how bad my relationship with my parents is, they're going to go on the internet or go talk to a journalist or something. They're going to expose me. Like, it's not like trust in terms of secrecy.
Right. Yeah.
But if you don't have a high level of trust, why would you tell them? Why would they listen? Why would, it's not, so yeah. I mean, correct me wrong, but I think you did, with the meetings and kind of short-term attempts at friendship, you had those when there was a feeling of an awareness of like, okay, you get up to a certain threshold. And then there's this question of, is it worth it? What's the point?
Absolutely.
And
that
it
was
isn't.
that was a huge part of the experience that I had with trying to make these friendships with people in my late 20s, is that, number one, I did have the experience with revealing some personal information and finding that it really meant nothing, because it meant less to me than it did with sharing with somebody that I would really want to know, and that somebody that I trusted. So when you share some of these things with people that you have no relationship with, no connection with, really, this is partly why I find the relationship that people have with therapists not to be that productive, because okay, you can share this kind of information about yourself and about your relationship with your parents, but where is it going from here, and what does this mean? So yeah, I did have that, but I also had the other person doing the same for me, like just piling on all of their trauma, like at once, like telling me everything that has happened, like wrong, and what's been tragic in their lives, and wanting to comfort them, but at the same time feeling like, wow, this person's like literally crying in front of me, like what should I do? We don't even know each other. I mean, it is like quickly like building this bond between you, and I wish no harm on the people. I wish only best for these people, but there were just things that seemed to be barriers between us, whether it's meat eating, whether it's just drinking alcohol, doing drugs, like what they actually do with their lives, which influences who they are as a person.
And people cheating on their boyfriends and girlfriends stuff. So I don't know if I'd say I only had one friend who's from here in Victoria, but it's pretty close. Like, maybe it was 2 or 3 or something. Like, there were a few people in this city who were my friends, but one of the few, we're not going to say her name, she was a woman who cheated on her boyfriend during the time that she was friends with me. And she several times called me up for moral support when she was at that time actively lying to her boyfriend and cheating on him. And there was more than one person she pursued, like where she was trying to cheat on her boyfriend or whatever. And I remember it was just very surprising. She knew my YouTube show. She knew me. We knew each other face to face. We were friends face to face. And I was nice to her in saying this, but like you're saying in the nicest way possible, like, look, you are doing the wrong thing. You know, I can put it to you, that you're doing the wrong thing, and here's the right thing to do. By the way, I wasn't saying she should be true to the guy. Like, you should break up with this guy first and then pursue this other relationship. It's not like I'm saying she should remain committed to the same boyfriend. She wasn't happy with him, blah, blah, blah. But the way to be unhappy with your boyfriend is not lying to him, deceiving him, cheating on him, and so on and so forth. Right. I don't support that. And, and again, she was nice to me back on the phone, but that ended the friendship. Her sense that I was judging her, even though she knew I was right. And she got in touch with me later and told me that. So it's not just my opinion. It's not like me saying to you, she knew I was right. She has said that to me. She has said to me directly, look, I knew you were right. I knew what I was doing was wrong. Right? She knows now or whatever, that's how she looks back on it also. But she never got over it. So, when you were saying before building up this kind of friendship or bond or togetherness with somebody, it's also a question of what is it for,
Yeah.
And depending on what walk of life you're in, you may not have to question that all that much. But, are you in an alliance with people? For a lot of people, you're just an alliance with people in order to go out, get drunk, and cheat on your boyfriend. You're in an alliance with people to go out and do things that you think are naughty but entertaining.
Right.
It's part of a reckless life of self-indulgence. When you don't have that, what is this friendship for? Mm-hmm. And again, you guys can tell I'm a gregarious person. I'm good at talking, whatever you want to say. I have good social skills, whatever. It's not that, but you might be underestimating just the extent to which I am alone because of this kind of ethical incompatibility with other people. And they feel it, no matter how nice I am, they feel judged. They feel they're not living up to my standards. I've had people tell me directly, like in exactly these words, that when they are with me, they feel stupid. When they're with me, they feel they don't live up to my intellectual standards. They feel like I've had people say that to me even more bluntly than that. They say, when I'm around you, I feel dumb. When I'm around you, I feel like I'm not living up to this higher standard of, reading and learning things all the time and having interesting things to talk about. I've had people say to me that they don't want to be friends with me because they feel that they don't have enough interesting things to say, whereas I always have interesting things to talk.
Yeah.
It ain't deep, but it's real. It's shallow and it's profound at the same time. So you can live your life alone because you're too interesting a person, not because you're too boring a person. I really mean that. And I'm really in a position to say that. And I can say that when I was hanging out with people who were all enrolled in PhD programs in Cambridge, England, like people of high levels of formal education, but they're fucking boring, shallow, stupid people.
In terms of finding somebody that will engage in naughty night of debauchery with you or something. I have had people like pressure me and not really believe that I live a sober life. They think that I'm just pretending. And I have had people say, oh, just make an exception this night. Like, let's get drunk tonight. Like, this is my special night. And
was that in Detroit or was that here in?
Yeah, it was
okay, just
in America.
In America,
Okay. So I've had people that like don't respect my commitment to this and don't like
they don't get it.
Realize that this is it's something I don't even think about. I don't crave alcohol, but
right.
But it is still something that every day, like I make this choice, and it's something that has taken determination and discipline, and I don't want to just drop that to have a fun night with you. And I respect that. And a lot of people don't. They just, they want to live out kind of childish ideas of what friendship is, that friendship should be people making excuses for your bad behaviors. And if you want to, scream and dance and run around and act like a kid, act like a
I grew up
kid.
I grew up in Ontario. Okay, I grew up in Ontario. There were many young men, and their sense of socialization came from hockey. So ice hockey. Well, you could call this little league ice hockey, but it's not the actual term. But they did some kind of intramural small hockey league, and hockey was more than just hockey. Hockey, and again, this could be like already when they're 12, like 12 to 22. So we're like, but they would meet up with guys. Their first experiences drinking alcohol were linked to the hockey club. Their first experiences having heterosexual sex were through alcohol. A lot of these guys had homosexual and bisexual experiences through team sports. There were a lot. There was a lot of that going on. Like they still identify as straight, but once they've got the toga on or something, you know what I mean. Once they're getting drunk and partying with the guys, and then what you're saying is still wanting to have this childish thing. Very often, okay, then they go from doing intramural hockey to being a stockbroker and working on the stock market. And many of them, in an unexamined way, they still are trying to reproduce that sense of group, clannish, reckless self-indulgence that they had
for sure.
when they were a small league hockey player. That was when they felt they were with a group of guys together, and they may continue playing hockey. You can be a middle-aged man who's in a hockey, amateur hockey club, not a real serious, but and obviously there's some guys for whom that's basketball. My point is this model extends to a lot of people's lives. But yes, the sense of transgressive risk taking, and for them, that's what friendship is about, and maybe what their whole life is about.
Yeah,
they
definitely. The camaraderie that comes with a night out like that.
The sense of danger.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I think I definitely can see that being more of a factor for men who have been involved in team sports, but also like women who they get dressed up. It's this occasion. It's kind of like just the act of putting on makeup, blow drying your hair, and putting on very tribal, nice dress or something. Yes, it's very much a ritualistic thing that now I can engage in these behaviors that I don't feel comfortable doing with on my day earlier in the day or whatever.
In some ways, women they're putting on a mask together, and then they're going out to a masquerade. Yep. There's a lot of that. And for women too, it may involve lesbian and bisexual activity or group sex, other kinds of transgressive sexual acts. And a lot of people get stuck on that, forever. So look, guys, I really planned in this video to address how this applies to me. And I just say, it's one of these things. Being self-confident doesn't mean you're not alone. Being handsome doesn't mean you're not alone. Being intelligent or being brilliant doesn't mean you're not alone. There is a very understandable assumption that struggling with being forever alone is because you're stupid. It's maybe because you're lazy, you're self-indulgent. It maybe is because you're uncharismatic. It may be because you have a speech impediment, like you're really not good at talking one way or another. You have some kind of disability, physical or mental, that prevents you from socializing with people. There is a real assumption that struggling with being alone or being forever alone is because of weakness rather than strength. Now, as we've already hinted at, it really can be because of strength. And it can just be because you're incompatible with the culture and political circumstances you happen to be born into. Again, if you are an atheist living in a majority Muslim culture, if you are someone who rejects the values and compromises that define the cultural circumstances around you, then you are alone, whether you regard that rejection as a weakness or a strength. There have been a couple different people referring to. Someone was saying that he went to a university where every single person drank alcohol, no exceptions. There were no sober people at this university. Well, I used to live in Scotland. I used to live in Glasgow, Scotland. And I think that would have been 1991, 1990. I could pin it down exactly. It's a long time ago. Let me tell you, at that time, nobody was sober in Glasgow, Scotland. I mean, there was no culture and no concept of sobriety. The dominance of alcohol drinking, sports watching culture was absolute. And in my university years, this was really during my last year in high school, when I quit drinking and started to make the transition to this more intellectual way of living. And you're like, whoa, and now I'm totally alone. Like now I'm alone. Now I'm cut off from, again, things change. Now I'm cut off from the drinking culture. And again, look, I was self-confident. I was well-spoken. I was handsome. And there were women who still wanted to have sex with me in the circumstance that met me. To give an example, I was reminded of this because I was talking to somebody else about writing for the newspaper. I remember there was one year where I wrote for the university newspaper. And the woman who was the president, I think, of the newspaper, as a student, it's the university newspaper, she wanted to sleep with me. Like, right away. She was a smart, interesting person too. She was okay. Like, I don't have anything against her. So the little bit of social contact I had with other people, it did bring me into contact with women who wanted to have sex with me. But nevertheless, like, I was really alone. I was really cut off from the culture I was born into. And again, you guys, I think many people, just because I'm self-confident, because I'm well-spoken, because I'm objectively, like, there's nothing wrong with my face or body. I'm 6'3". I can bench press more than 200 pounds. I can do more than 200 push-ups. There's a sense in which I'm in good health and always have been. Like, I've never really been that far out of shape. And even when I have more weight on, guess what, guys? Not all women are looking for a skinny dude. When I've been 20 pounds heavier than I am now, women still want to fuck me. Being brilliant helps, but I've been in shape. I've been strong even when I had more body fat on. Being tall and strong and stuff. Well, guess what? You can still have to struggle with and still have to philosophize about being #forever alone. Now, again, a lot of you guys haven't visualized it this way. When I was at the University of Toronto, I was alone. Yes, there were women who wanted to have sex with me. I was alone in exactly the sense we now spent an hour, I was explaining to you, totally alienated from the culture. Well, how do you think I felt when I was living in Thailand? Like, I had a fascinating, rewarding life in so many ways, but I was alone. Like, to illustrate this, I had a girlfriend at the time. This is when I was with my blonde ex-girlfriend. There was one morning when we woke up early and we were going to a particular museum. It was hard to get to. So I could fill in all the details, but there's no point. So we woke up early. It was 7 a.m. Like, it wasn't insanely early. It was something like that. And most of the shops were still closed. Restaurants were still closed and so on. And at that time, I was 90% vegan, but I identified as strictly vegetarian. I would eat Parmesan cheese on pasta. I had some vegetarian but not vegan stuff in my diet. And so we woke up early, and I think, like, we're gonna start the trip. The trip to this museum starts at 7:30 a.m. or something. It's like, oh, okay, where can we get a bite to eat or get some food? And I was assuming we're just gonna go to 7-Eleven, go to a convenience store, and buy some vegetarian chocolate bars or something. But there was this restaurant that was open. It's like, oh, wow, great. What a surprise. There's a restaurant doing breakfast at, kind of the crack of dawn kind of thing. And so we go over and sit down, and we're really surprised. The menu is in English because, it could be for local Thai people, but this is obviously a place catering to foreigners. And we sit down and we order some stuff. It's a big surprise. And then the next surprise is a whole series of middle-aged and elderly white guys come in, and they say hi to me like I'm a friend of theirs, like they know me from somewhere. So, hey man, I don't know what's up. And again, I'm going to this museum. I got my blonde girlfriend with me. Again, she's not an Asian woman. She's a white person I knew from Canada. And after a certain amount of time, they turn on the TV, and what it was this restaurant was specially open that morning for the Super Bowl. And if it wasn't the Super Bowl, it was some other major football game in America. I don't feel sorry. So, like, if someone checks the calendar and like, no, that's impossible because this is what I don't know the sports, but there was some important football game being broadcast in America, and like I don't know, it's on at 6 p.m. in California, which is 7:30 a.m. in Thailand or something.
Yeah.
They started watching this thing, and that's why they were saying hi to me. Was they completely assumed that I was another beer drinking, prostitute sleeping with, a long-term tourist or retired person,
Right.
that I was a white man like them in Thailand for the same reasons they were, who was going to sit down and start drinking beer at 7:30 in the morning. And, like, first thing in the day, they did, all those guys ordered drinks and started drinking first thing in the morning while watching, a broadcast American sports game. So look, like, in this same sense, when I was in Toronto, I was alone. When I was in Thailand, I was alone. And being handsome and being self-confident and being able to get laid, it doesn't solve the problem. And I really had to philosophize about it. And you had to ask yourself, is this worth doing? Is it worthwhile to remain committed to the things that are making me alone, that are making me a pariah in this culture? In the same way that an atheist might consider converting to Islam just so they can live a better life within that culture. Sure. I had to really think about it. But guys, so I just say my current attitude is maybe not that significant to this video. But now I'm a mean old man. I'm 43 years old and so on, right? but like, a lot of you in the audience will not appreciate, and you will not have ever imagined that I'm someone who really identifies with and relates to this hashtag forever alone. But it has been a huge part of my life. And in a meaningful sense, it still is, Now, I can put some other hypotheticals in just to put some perspective. Okay. What if Melissa and I have a child in Los Angeles? We don't have definite plans. We may have a kid, we may not. There's more than one possible future there. Okay. I have to go and meet the parents of the other children at that school. Like, dude, like I'm alone. Like I really am alienated from these people. And again, I may not complain. There's not necessarily any drama, not necessarily any conflict. Like being alone doesn't mean there's conflict or drama in your life. It can be not. You can go and meet these people and sit down in the room with them and go through the motions. But like, dude, I am alone. Like the things that bring me together in close contact with or force me to cooperate with other people in that society, they're only going to illustrate or demonstrate again the depth and extent of that alienation, the extent to which I still am in some ways, forever alone.
Well, we had a conversation earlier this week that went really in depth with this about human nature, about our requirements biologically versus intellectually, like what we desire from people, like from our relationships. And this desire to reach out to people, like even in that example, if this is some parents that your child is going to school with, the parents of the child that your child is going to school with, it would make sense for you to like want to have some relationship with them, right? Like, I know this is a hypothetical thing, but people deal with this. People, they want to have parents that they can have play dates with their kids, to set up play dates so that
be a member of the parent-teacher association.
Exactly,
all stuff,
yeah. And that doesn't have to be a religious thing. You can just find people at your kids' preschool or your kids' daycare. So yeah, I think we all have this kind of urge to find other people that we can collaborate with and cooperate with. And at what point do you decide that they are not worth it, or it's incompatible?
Right. But most of the time, the rejection is mutual.
Yeah.
Like most of the time, those people are suspicious of me. Like that's what I said. Like it's pretty rare it's going to be my choice. You're going to feel.
Yeah.
You're going to feel the alienation. You may actually feel disgusted by these people. You know what I mean?
No, it's real. Yeah.
And again, like this is the thing. I differ from a lot of the people on that Reddit group in that I really do sympathize with the other side. Like I understand, okay, for these other people, that's what their life is about. That's what's meaningful for them. That's what they cherish. And, they don't even want me to exist. They don't want to be in any kind of contact with me. They may find my politics disturbing, my religion disturbing, my ethical values. What to me is good for them is evil, and vice versa. There's a really deep mutual incompatibility.
No, that's really true. And especially when you add a child into the mix, like I don't want my child associating with this. I remember when I was
raises the stakes.
Yeah.
Go on. Yeah.
I don't want to extend this too much, but I will just say like this relates because when I was in elementary school, I had a friend, and her mother identified as H. She had stickers on the back of her car that said, "My other car is a broom," broomstick.
Wiccanism, yes. Yeah.
Yes. So my mother was Christian. She was Lutheran, and she wanted to raise me Lutheran, and she was worried about this influence. But nevertheless, she knew that this was my friend, and I wanted to hang out with her. And she made this compromise. This, if she had been more committed to, separating me from other people, from seeing other ways of life, I guess, she would have ended that friendship or kept me from being friends with her, as an 8-year-old kid or 9-year-old kid. So yeah, I mean, yeah. To what extent do you want to allow your children to see other cultures, be influenced by other people, and what you consider evil? Some people might consider us evil because we're nihilistic atheist people, and
right.
we're tearing. We want to tear down the things that they hold dear to them and precious to them. So yeah, I recognize it is mutual alienation there.
Well, and another example in our lives is, I reject people who are communist, and people who are communist reject me.
Yeah,
I'm an anti-communist. That might sound controversial. Well, have you been on a university campus in the 21st century? Fucking half of the professors are communists.
Yeah.
I have to deal with professors who are active members of the Communist Party. And again, they perceive me as evil, and I perceive them as evil.
Yeah.
So it's shallow and it's deep at the same time. And people who are less intellectual than we are, they may not think it through and assign words to it. They may just experience it as a kind of panic, as a kind of revulsion. Look, my fellow vegans feel that way about me. So I am vegan, or I happen to be vegan, but there are all these vegans who devote their lives to running a petting zoo. I've talked to vegans, they're like, oh, they have 35 pets living in their apartment. They don't own a house. They live in an apartment with 35 pets. They're like, oh, yeah, I rescued this cat from here. I rescued this from there. And oh, we have to keep these animals in separate rooms and separate cages because they'll kill each other. Like, they got 35 animals in their fucking apartment. That's their whole life. Well, okay, it's not their whole life, but, a lot, they're devoted to that. So, I mean, someone like that might be a little bit interested in me and my way of thinking and my philosophy. But they may not think it through. They're going to reject me and I'm going to reject them. There are all these things. So, what this comes down to, it's both the social instincts and the antisocial instincts. We have antisocial instincts for a reason too. Well, look, today, I mean, I'm putting myself in the mindset of a younger man or a younger woman for different reasons. Today, I am 100% at peace with being forever alone. Now, I don't have plans to do this, but guys, I could move to Thailand and live in Thailand for the rest of my life and not give a fuck that I'm forever alone. I don't care at all. And like, if I'm living in Thailand, there are like European tourists, American tourists, Australian tourists. It's one kind of person you can have, but I'm forever alone. Like, there's really no compatible. And then, of course, there's the entire population of Thailand. And then there are Chinese people too. There are other Asian, like there are Japanese people and Chinese people, but there are Thai people in Thailand. And I can get along with them and live my life and totally embrace being forever alone. But that's me now. That's me in my 40s, right? Where I already have a meaningful life. I already have a very firm grip on what I think the meaning of life is. And I can go around with this tremendous sense of self-confidence. Like, yeah, I know what's up. If you don't, fuck you. You know what I mean? This is my meaningful life. If you want to be a part of it, great. If not, jump off. I don't give a fuck, That's where I'm at now. And it would be difficult for me to figure out at exactly what point in my autobiography I was there 100% of the way. The other funny thing about me is right now I'm writing a book. Writing a book is a completely solitary art form. I don't really need anyone else. Publishing a book is another thing. If any of you are involved in publishing, hit me up. I'd love to have a real publisher, and I don't. I can just dump it on Amazon. But, most of the things I wanted to do with my life, they were social. They did involve other people cooperating together, including just politics, including learning languages and teaching languages. A lot of these things bring people together, and you have to cooperate closely with people. So, my life would be different if I were a painter or if I'd consistently remained just an author, just focused on writing in that way. There are things I could do that would have cut me off from people sooner. But look, for someone at my age and my stage of the game, it's difficult to cast my mind back to the feelings and attitudes I had at like age 18, where it's like, whoa, I am alone and I am forever alone. And, I'm not saying this to insult people. You can be at that stage when you're 28, when you're 38, when you're 48. You can be at that stage when you're 68 and your husband or wife died. Like maybe you weren't forever alone your whole life, but you're forever alone now. Now you're old and nobody likes you and nobody cares about you, so on and so forth, so, my point is not to trivialize it by saying, I'm thinking about how I felt at age 18. And it can be at any age, but like to really appreciate that sense of, this is a real simple, straightforward way to put it, but it's deep. What am I alone for? If you join the army, what are you joining the army for? If you join the army and you're assigned to a particular brigade, a particular platoon, why am I with these guys? What am I with these guys for? Well, hope you know the answer. If not, leave the army. You know, like if you have a sense of esprit de corps and purpose, I'm working with these guys to win this war, to achieve this objective, you know, or even just to achieve excellence in the particular job you have in the army. You know, like you're going to be the best machine gun operator you can possibly be. It's just that kind of, you know, pursuing excellence for the sake of excellence, whatever it is. You know, you know what you are together with these people for. Well, what are you alone for? And is it good enough? And then I think that tears people apart, because there were people who made the decision, whatever it is you studied or whatever line of work you got into. I mean, I used to be a scholar of Buddhism. I had to ask myself, did I get into this to be alone? Like, do I want to keep doing this if I am going to be #forever alone? Like, oh yeah, it's great being, oh yeah, it's not great. Sorry, I'm speaking sarcastic. I was going to say it's great being the most brilliant person in the field. It's not. It's horrible. Nothing is worse than being the most brilliant person in your field. And not because I was that brilliant, but because everyone else is a fucking moron. You know what that's like? It's horrible. It's terrible. You know what it's like being smarter than your own university professor? You know what it's like being more knowledgeable and more well-read in the subject your professor has their PhD in? It's awful. And that was my experience in Buddhism again and again and again. There are these old men with PhDs, and they know less than I do. And already 20 years ago, they knew less than I do. For real, bro. So it's not great. It's not great having nobody to look up to and being the most brilliant person in the field. It's not. So, like in my case, it's a very particular example. Like, did I get into the study of this language, this kind of research? Did I get into this to be alone? And if the answer is no, I got to change my whole life. I got to find a new field of studies. I got to find a new career, which I did. Right? Like, no, I'm not cool. I'm not cool with being alone in this line of work. You know, but my point here is a lot of people are studying something or have a line of work which is way less rewarding than Buddhist philosophy or Buddhist history, Buddhist politics, right? A lot of people are looking at the job. They got a degree in chemistry. They became a dentist, you know, whatever it is. They got some job that earns some money, and they're looking at their life and going, whoa, when I signed up for this, I didn't think I would be alone. They had some assumption. They would have colleagues, they would have friends, they'd be part of a larger unit, they'd be leading a meaningful life together with other people with some sense of esprit de corps and some sense of purpose. And they've got to sit here and look at the reality of the fact that they're not. And again, it doesn't matter. If it's your own fault, doesn't matter. Like, you know, sure, it's other people's fault to some extent. If it's your fault, whether it's 50-50 or 80-20 or 20, doesn't matter, because you are dealing with that reality of being #forever alone, no matter whose fault it is, no matter where you cast blame or cast aspersions in your analysis.
Earlier, you asked me when you started feeling alienation from people in this way. So I could ask you the same thing. However, I feel like, you know, you've given a pretty good outline of like at what's that. Okay. What I'm trying to say is I can see how this has influenced how you've lived your life, because you weren't living for your friendships in Toronto,
right?
Because you decided, I'm willing to, you know, move across the world and never come back. You know, never come back to Canada. A lot of people,
willing is an understatement. Yeah, I was willing to never come back to Toronto. Go ahead.
Yeah. You were eager, but a lot of people they do feel this sense of loyalty to stay in a place because of the friends that they have. So in some ways, I'm not saying it's, you know,
and they keep being judged and keep judging within the same little cultural context again and again and again. They keep getting rejected, and they won't move or won't change. Going,
but it shows to me a real strength of character that you had, that you were not going places for the people.
Yes.
You were not going to.
I used to laugh about that. Go on.
Doing it for the people. I'm not moving to Thailand to meet people. And I think that really did kind of, you can disagree with me.
Go ahead.
But my sense is that influenced like the relationships that you did have with people,
right?
And that you weren't, you know, heartbroken if you might have at various times been upset by friendships ending. But I think like how you've just met a lot of different people. You have a lot of different stories that you can draw upon, you know, from having met a lot of different people. That, you know, you saw them as individuals, as who they were, not as people who were trying, you know, not that you were trying to be their friend or you weren't caught up in this I hope this is making sense. Like the being caught up in this idea of trying to make friends, it might distract you from actually like getting
Yeah.
to know people for who they are, in the same way that like trying to have this relationship with your parents distracts you from like who they actually are, and you know, really getting to know people um,
Yeah.
as they are as individuals, versus like, you know, the kind of relationship that you're building. So I don't know. Hopefully that made
But
sense.
you were asking a question. Your question
Yeah.
was, at what point do you?
Yes.
You
Yes.
want to just restate the question or no?
Sure. Yeah. So at what point did you feel that you would be forever alone in these um
I can say
yeah.
very precisely. So it was the
Yeah.
second last year of high school, and that's kind of the end of my period of being involved in the theater. Well, not quite. Sorry. So after that, while I was in university no, sorry. Actually, my involvement in theater continues to university in some ways. So I had maybe 2 years in high school where I was really involved in the theater and think of myself long term as being involved in. And it's interesting. I didn't think about filmmaking much, but I realized if you're successful in on the stage, you can, you know, branch out and do film. But live theater was really what I was thinking about. Being a playwright, etc. But then to some extent also being an actor and stand-up comedy and that stuff. So I had maybe 2 years in high school where that was more and more at the front of my mind. I did when I was in university. A little bit about, I was a theater critic to some extent. I was attending plays and seeing what was going on, and I went and I auditioned in the theater department at the university and had contact with them and so on. Uh, there are two parts to it. One is accepting the forever alone thing. But, that was that so that happened then. That was during high school for me. Absolutely. Absolutely was.
Yeah.
Specifically, second last year of high school and the trend. So that whole year and then the transition to last year of high school. Absolutely. That's when I had to recognize that and philosophy that and really deal with it. So it was during high school for me. What took longer was accepting that other people were actually stupider than me. I really wanted to believe for the longest time that like other people were just as smart as I was. They just weren't trying hard. They just weren't motivated. You know what I mean? They were just, and it's, you can talk yourself into that,
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
like, oh yeah, all these people, they're also kind of brilliant and hardworking the way I am. They're just, they're doing something else. It's not their interest, which, obviously that's projecting, because a lot of things I can remember, whatever. I can remember teachers some teachers thought I was a genius and some thought I was an idiot. It's like, look, I remember getting an A+ on a test, and like the teacher coming over talking to me. I was like, look, I never read the book. I don't know what the fuck's wrong with you. Like, you think I worked hard to get this A? Like, I literally did none of the reading. I did, I've made no effort at all. I just have a good memory, whatever, it's not even testing your intellectual abilities in any real sense. But in my involvement in theater, also in university, what was harder to really accept and deal with is like, wow, these people are that stupid. These people like, wow. Sorry, I could tell anecdotes like, all the time. For me, at least, when I was a young man, you'd think this person can't be that stupid. It can't be that bad. It can't be. It's like, it's that bad. And that took a lot longer. And that's obviously, I talk a lot about generosity of spirit on this channel. I think I was kind of born with too much generosity of spirit, where I really wanted to think the best of people and assign positive motives to them and
Yeah.
positive intellectual traits to them. And then really accepting like, oh, wow, no, like things that I can do that I totally take for granted, other people can't do and are never going to be capable of. And, some of them are jealous of me. Some of them resent me and hate me for it. Most don't. Most of them are just happy getting drunk and watching sports, going to nightclubs and doing cocaine, doing the things they are doing with their time. And, I know this is a shallow example, but it is relevant to this. It's relevant to theater. The way you and I will watch a TV program, well, it's true of documentaries. We can watch an historical documentary, and I can be pausing it and pointing out to you all the things that are wrong with it and the things the narrator is lying about and the ways in which the narrator is intentionally misleading you. And other people watch that same documentary and they don't catch any of that. And they even can't. That's the really weird thing about living life the way I do. And, so that was the harder turning point that came later. Because I still don't want to believe it. I want to believe everyone's brilliant. I want to believe everyone's smarter than I am. To give an example, I want to believe my parents are smarter than I am. They're not. Both of my parents were much stupider than I was their whole lives as old people and as young people and everything else. Like, I grew up with stupid parents, guys, and that was hard to accept. Like, whoa, like they're not doing this on purpose. They're really that stupid. Like, they're not pretending to be stupid. Really dealing with that with your own parents. And I wanted to believe my teachers and university professors were smarter than me. And really, whoa, no, you're not pretending. You're really this stupid all the time. And it's not that your mind is preoccupied with something else. It's not, yeah, that was the harder thing to get. And anyway, yeah. And also, I mean, the other thing is I always scoffed at it, but there always were people, whether it was university professors or not. The earliest one I can remember, this kid wasn't my friend like for any length of years. It was a kid who was my friend for a couple weeks or something when I was a child. I didn't know this kid for long, maybe a couple months, I don't know. But I remember I went with this kid and his parents to a museum. It was a museum I'd never been to before. So my parents weren't there. I didn't have any parent booth. So it was me with this kid and his parents going to this museum. And again, I don't think I ever did anything with that kid after that. It was some kid I knew at school for a short period of time. And I was really little. This was, I think, kindergarten year, or it could have been grade 1. I was a really small kid. I remember how tall I was. And as I was walking around this museum, like I was, okay, maybe could that have been grade 2? I'm sorry, I could be misremembering it a little bit. I remember how small I was. But you've even seen this with my daughter. My daughter in kindergarten year, her verbal ability was really high. And English is
in both English and
English.
I
know. But anyway, I think it was like that. It was like with my daughter, where you like can't believe how well spoken this kid is when they're like 4 years old. I really think it was at that stage. I was really like kindergarten. So I was trying to put it later because remember the other person. But no, I think that was for me. That was like kindergarten year. Anyway, and while I was walking around the museum, I was able to point to and say intellectually sophisticated things about all this stuff in the museum. And I remember both the boy, so the other little boy who's the same age as me, like I knew him from school or whatever, and his mother, they were both saying in different ways, like, whoa, this is the most brilliant child. Like, I've never met anyone like this before, And I remember, when the mother said it, I just completely scoffed at and dismissed. The same way adults will tell you you're very handsome or very beautiful as a child. It's just, grown-ups are. They want to say something nice to the little kid. And you're aware, even the ugliest kid, they'll pat in the head and say, oh, you're beautiful, it just kind of dismissed that. But I was much more confused by the boy my own age, because little kids insult each other and fight and stuff. And I remember him really saying, like, whoa, you're some kind of extraordinary, person this way. And I found that harder to kind of deal with. And I was trying to say, what, don't you know all this stuff? I was like, what's the matter with you, kind of thing. I didn't say that, but that's what I was thinking. Like, what do you mean? Like, doesn't everybody know this? And that came up other times when I was a little kid. I remember a kid coming over to dinner at my house. I remember who this kid was. It's a kid I knew for several years. And he was just shocked to see me talking politics with my father. This would have been grade 2. So yeah, now I'm comparing that first memory that really was like kindergarten, and then this was grade 2. And I disagreed with my father. Like we'd debate politics. I want to say, that I was self-confident and shrewd. Now, obviously, I was a child. Obviously, no wrong with stuff. But he and we didn't just talk about politics. We talked about science and history a little bit. My father and I were at the dinner table, and I think it's fair to say nobody else talked. Like my mom and my sister didn't say that. It was me and my dad dominating the dinner table. And I remember this kid saying to me, like, I think I walked him home after I had dinner at my house. He said, like, oh, like now I realize why you're so brilliant. Like, it's because you've grown up in this household where you have these intellectual discussions over the dinner table. And I didn't think of myself that way at all. And I looked at him like, well, what do you talk to your parents about? You know what I mean? Like, what? Like, this kid was blown away with that. So no, I'm just going back to the earliest examples. Obviously I have experience when I'm in university and once I'm actually writing and things, but that was a second, much more difficult thing to accept. And here's why I'm talking about it. The result is you are alone. Like that's what comes out of that. You live in a fundamentally anti-intellectual culture like Toronto, Canada, and you're alone. Now, if I had been born and raised in Berlin, it'd be different. The Germans are not hyper pro-intellectual, but they're somewhat pro-intellectual. They're somewhat supportive intellectual, somewhat pretentious as a culture. I didn't grow up in Berlin. I grew up in Toronto. You know what I mean? And I feel it. I've known. I had black friends growing up. By the way, I did. I had black friends who were intellectuals, And they grew up walking distance from me. Like it's, I lived in downtown Toronto, but they did in effect live in a black neighborhood, a very short distance from where I am. But anyway, they lived closer to other black people. And I knew for them, they grew up in like an even more ridiculously openly anti-intellectual culture. These are like Jamaican immigrants in Toronto, or just, the dominant culture worships sports, marijuana, alcohol, a certain kind of machismo, certain kinds of gender roles for both men and women, in this very openly anti-intellectual culture, So I knew a couple of black intellectuals when I was in high school. I didn't know, maybe I'm forgetting, I wasn't close to anyone in university. Was in that category. And again, this alienation and hostility and what have you. And I can remember being in that black neighborhood, and I've probably told this before, and people assuming, and people coming up to me and assuming and talking to me, they assumed that I was a light-skinned black preacher for one of the religions. Like black guys coming up to me in the neighborhood and being like, "Hey, brother, are you with," like they asked if I was with the Louis Farrakhan group or if I was with this group. Like just because I'm like carrying a book and I'm an intellect, it's like, no, like I'm not, like for one thing, I'm not black. It's like they perceived me as a light-skinned black guy. I had a shaved head. Like they thought I was someone who was like 1/8 or 1/16 black or something. And they perceived me as being part of one of those religious groups, because in that neighborhood, the only people who kind of carry a book and I don't know, look and act the way I do are people who are part of those religious groups. So yeah, look, I'm just saying this to contextualize it. If you grew up as an intellectual in Hong Kong, China, where you're supposed to just care about earning money, if you grew up as an intellectual in South Korea, if you grew up as an intellectual in Thailand, a lot of these are profoundly anti-intellectual cultures. So yeah, look, so Ron Sim says, I know quite a bit about Ron from over the years. So Ron, I'm sure Ron can relate to what I'm talking about. There will be different people in my audience who relate to what I'm talking about. Okay, you know what else sucks? Being stupid. This is not my struggle in life, but I think that and feel that about my fellow YouTubers all the time. Like, how do you look in the mirror and cope with yourself? It's one thing to look in the mirror and feel that you're ugly, to look in the mirror and feel that you're stupid, and to be performing on YouTube and listen to your own YouTube video later and think, whoa, I'm stupid. So yeah, that's my struggle. That's my situation. And it absolutely is about being #forever1. It is relevant to this. I'm not just doing this self-indulgent way. But sure, for other people, it's instead the sense that they're disappointing to others, that they're too stupid to others. You may have the feeling that you're too stupid for your own parents, that your parents feel impatient and let down by you when you talk to them, that your friends like, oh God, what is it now? Like you may be the one who's too stupid, and sorry, go on. But I just say that's not everyone's struggle. But either way, whether it's because you're brilliant or stupid or whatever it is, you can be, for whatever reason, if you're alone, you're alone. It's the same real fundamental fact, which is not being lonely. You can be lonely under any conditions, but this is about the reality of being alone.
Good. Yeah, good answer. That was my question. When did you first start noticing, that you're #forever alone? Yeah. No, I mean,
go on. Yeah.
Do you want to?
Well, I was going to say someone's raising the issue of narcissism, which I know a lot about. I used to have a member of my family who was diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder. In case you don't know who I'm talking about, it's someone who was a member of my family before and isn't a member of my family now. So I know quite a lot about the diagnosis and the reality of narcissism. I just say, the reality of narcissists and the reason why they cause so much friction in society. And I'll just say, at this time, there's no medical evidence that narcissism is a biologically real condition. It may be. I mean, it's possible. I remember a particular study with MRI scans of brain abnormalities of people diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder, NPD. It is possible that the same way that autism is now known to be a biologically real condition, it's possible narcissism will be diagnosed as such. It's also possible that narcissism and autism are two different types of behavior resulting from the same biological problem. It really is. Anyway, sorry. But, so I know quite a lot about narcissism. But the reality is narcissists are not hermits. They're not people who want to be alone. They're exactly people who are always reaching out for and seeking validation. Now, I just say this. spent the last hour talking about myself. There were many, many ways in which my behavioral type or psychological type is the opposite of a narcissist. And I've taken those tests. I score almost 0. It's on Twitter with my actual score. I got like 2 out of 200 or something on the narcissist test. And like the average for an American was 33 or something. It was like, I'm way, way below. I'm basically at 0 on the narcissist scale. But one of the things you might not know about me is that I don't like telling my own story. I don't, one of the things that test asks you a lot about is being the center of attention. I don't try to be the center of attention. I'm quite delighted to not be the center of attention. Now, anyway, you can get into the background and who I am, what I'm like, and talk about it. But because of the format of YouTube, you're used to me being the center of attention because I'm the person giving the monologue. It's actually not the way I live my life. That's not the kind of guy I am. I'm not an attention-grabbing type of person. But I mean, I think what's interesting about narcissists is that they are constantly rebelling against their isolation. They actively crave, and they often do outrageous and daring things in order to get validation from other people. Now, to what extent is this the same topic we're discussing in this video, the Forever Alone thing? Well, we framed this conversation by talking about a very meaningful type of aloneness, a very meaningful type of isolation. But there's a much less meaningful type of isolation, which is just that you want other people to validate your ego, which is a lot of what goes on with NPD, with narcissism in its medically precise definition. So this is an anecdote, which you'll hear from many sources. If you have a therapist's office, and it's some kind of psychoanalyst, psychotherapist, or psychiatrist who specializes in people with NPD, who has a lot of clients with NPD, the secretary will know which of the clients are there for NPD, because one of the most predictable behaviors they have is bullying the secretary to make adjustments to the schedule so there will be a special exception made in their case. They'll come up to the secretary and say, oh, okay, so you do all the appointments on the hour or 30 minutes after the hour. Like all the appointments are there for 5 o'clock or 5:30 or 6 o'clock, 6:30 in this pattern. Okay, well, in my case, it has to start at 4:45. You're going to make an exception in my case because I'm an important person. That is like that one example. If you've known people with NPD, that is the condition. They want it, and they will bully the secretary at the doctor's office. So like in this outrageous, childish way, just to get the validation, just to get the recognition that they're special or important. That's what NPD is like. That's their struggle. So, early on in this video, I talked about the difference between being lonely and being alone. In that sense, people with NPD, people who really have narcissism, as strictly defined, they're always going to be lonely. They're never going to be gratified enough. They're never going to be satisfied with this kind of validation. I think it's fair to say for you and me both, we're at the opposite end of the spectrum. We don't really give a fuck about anything. I mean, sorry, but like we can go from shallow to deep. You don't need anyone to tell you that you're pretty. Like you don't need people to make you feel like you're high on the status chart with like competition with other women for how attractive you are. But also like you would never record music and upload music because you need people to tell you you're talented at the music. If you do, she has made a few songs. We've done a few musical things on YouTube, as a joke. No, but, for real, but you don't, when we did that, there's no sense of craving validation and ego, that kind of narcissistic, it's this very childish thing, wanting to know that you're special, wanting to be validated. So yeah, it overlaps with friendship and with being alone and loneliness and being forever. There's an overlap there, but it hasn't been especially what we're talking about in this video.
Yeah, no, it hasn't been. I just wanted to say in response to something that you had mentioned earlier about there is also loneliness in feeling alone, in feeling dumber than other people that you might not have had much experience with, given that you're brilliant.
Yeah, but I'm bad at some things. Anyway,
yeah.
Never learned to drive a car. But go on, There are things I'm dumb at.
Is dumb at some point.
Right.
Everybody is ignorant at some point. You learn.
Yes.
And I still feel like there is a lot of hope for people. Like I still feel like there is some value in my reaching out to people who I don't think are intellectuals or haven't really considered it. Like I still want to believe that people can become more intelligent and people can become people can change their minds about things. So in that sense, I still feel like optimistic that people can change, and that there's a point in my not just embracing being forever alone in this way, and trying to make the effort to reach out to other people. Like there is something that could come from it. But you've had a lot of experience with this, of being the more intellectual partner in both friendships and relationships. And you've had the experience of putting in a lot of effort.
Yes.
And a lot of time.
To help someone else, to help them raise up their level.
Yeah.
Right.
And then finding that either for emotional reasons or for, I guess, intellectual reasons, that it's just not going to work out, like that all the effort that you put into it is for naught, and that you regret that too.
Sure.
So, I respect that at this time in your life, you're more comfortable with your, not having colleagues, not having like a salon of people to discuss things with in this way. But you haven't always been that way. And, I've seen you struggling with it throughout the years, that, you want to have contemporaries. And,
but look, it's a great, just putting a human face on it. In case people can't visualize what we're talking about with having a salon, having colleagues. Autobiography of Benjamin Franklin. I mean, his whole career was made by having a salon, by having colleagues. Yeah. And he describes for you how it was organized, a book reading club, how a salon was organized. And then the book reading club, they donated their books and created a library. This is a very 18th century sense of what a library is. It was, gentlemen coming together, and, and again, sort of gender roles at the time were what they were. Most of these guys had married women who had no education at all. So their marriage was not in any way an intellectual partnership. Yeah. Many of them had arranged marriages and purchased marriages. Many of them owned slaves. So like their home was a place where their wife was ordering the slaves around. It's totally intellectually barren kind of place. And then these men made time to go to the salon and be part of a society of learned gentlemen. And, his whole political career, his newspaper publishing career, and his own development education, he had no formal education. He really never went to school. Came about through these salons, through participating in these book reading clubs, literary clubs, gentlemen's intellectual clubs. But just saying, to put a face on it, that really lets you visualize what you mean by having colleagues, having contemporaries. So,
absolutely. Yeah. That is a great example. And
right. But what if you're the dumbest guy at the club?
Yeah, right. So
my blonde ex-girlfriend, she raised that with me all the time, because when she was around me, she struggled with her own self-esteem. She said that she just felt so stupid being around me. She was bad at everything. And many times I gave her examples. They'd be examples, I'd be smiling. I was like, oh, but remember, like sometimes I'm the dumb one. And I'd give some, but remember in this situation, like I didn't know anything. Because there are some things I'm ignorant of. There's some things I'm incompetent of. And she'd say, yes, but you're smiling and laughing about that now, because the other 95% of the time you're brilliant and you're right. You know what you're talking about. And you're great at everything, And she would say that her situation was that she was wrong and stupid 95% of the time, was only good at 75%. She really struggled with that. And she told me about it. That was, it wasn't implicit in the relationship. It was really articulate. So how do you feel if you have those contemporaries, but they're always helping you, you're never helping them? So the hypothetical situation of not being alone, not being forever alone, but where you are the third wheel, or you are the weakest link in the chain. You're the dumbest guy at the book club. You're the dumbest. You're the guy nobody remembers from Benjamin Franklin's, salon. Yeah, you're the guy who's struggling to keep up and having other people explain things.
Yeah, and I remember from a young age, I have two older brothers. So my older brothers are like 7 and 5 years older than me. So being the younger sister, I had a lot of experience of them bullying me for being stupider, know? So at a very young age, I got used to being put on game, I was going to say, but like just being made fun of for being stupider.
Yeah.
And, I know that feeling of where it's like, well, how could I possibly know that? I'm younger and I don't have that experience. Like, how can you expect that of me? So yeah, I do also sympathize with the other situation and feel that there is still, like, as long as you can get over the like kind of emotional response to that and learn, like you can still like improve and be comfortable with your own ignorance, your own stupidity, but learned to move past it, so I just say in our relationship as well, obviously
Yeah.
you are more intelligent, you have been through a lot more experiences than I have, so I've also dealt with that same sense of inferiority, but once I've gotten over
Right.
that, it's so much better to
Right.
just recognize that
Okay.
like I
But
can learn, like I
let
can
me just point this
improve.
out though. Okay. Right. Your situation is that no matter how inferior you may feel you are to me at any given point in time, you still have the fundamental strength in your ego, the fundamental source of self-confidence, of feeling and knowing that you are better today than you were 5 years ago.
Mm.
And you're better today than you were 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Now, I think, are you better today than you were 1 month ago? It gets hard to say. Maybe you had a bad month,
No.
but no, the amount of intellectual progress, ethical progress, the amount of growth as a human being. Use whatever hippie terms you want.
Yeah.
But the amount of intellectual progress you've made is so great in the progress of in the space of 5 years that even if you feel you're way behind me or way below me, you're better than you were. Well, a lot of people don't have that. A lot of people, they're dumb and they stay dumb. They're ignorant and they stay ignorant. And they've been treading water for the last 5 years, And whatever. I'm James Aspie, all kinds of people, just because of the life they live, or for whatever combination of reasons. I don't mean people who are mentally disabled or something, but people who are just not making progress and who don't have that and don't feel that way.
Yeah.
Or they feel that the ways in which they did try to make progress, they've failed and let you down. And they weren't smart enough, weren't good enough, or whatever. Yeah.
That's true. Yeah. But I do think that other people can harness that same drive, that same ambition to become a more intelligent person.
Absolutely, and that's
a more sympathetic person too.
And look, that's why I'm doing this. I mean, I didn't have anyone to look up to when I did. I only had negative examples to look up to. I can only look at this guy and think, I don't want to end up like this guy. I want to do the opposite of what this guy is doing. I only had negative examples, whether you're thinking about on television, on the internet, people I knew face to face, authority figures, professors. I had nobody I could look to positively. And I mean, this YouTube channel began so I could be that for my own daughter. So if you guys don't know, I have a daughter growing up in France. I never get to see her. Maybe in the next few years I'll get to see her. I do have lawyers working on it, but I've no reason to think the legal situation is going to change or improve anytime fast. I just had email with her mom, my ex-wife, in the last few days actually. So, but there's no room for optimism. But sure, when I started this YouTube channel, I wanted to show what kind of man I was and how I lived, and to really demonstrate this is the life of the mind. This is having a meaningful life. This is what it's all about. And then she can take it and do with it whatever she wants to. My daughter may become a professional wrestler. You don't know. She may become I was going to say fireman, firewoman, fire person. She may work for the fire department. You don't know. I don't decide that, and I'm not going to. I'm not imposing that on her. But it's like, look, kid, if you want to know. And just to mention briefly, so we have another mention here that I'm a former scholar of Buddhism. Yeah. Well, if I'd never created this YouTube channel, my daughter could have grown up thinking about her father primarily as a scholar of Buddhism. She might have thought of me as a stereotypical hippie. She might have thought of me as someone who smokes marijuana and has dreadlocks and falls into a certain cultural pattern. I want to say, she might have thought of me quite an effeminate figure also. It's like, no, guess what? I was this really boisterous, dominant, self-confident, masculine guy, very nihilistic, very skeptical, very modern scientific attitudes, who went into Buddhism. And I wasn't a hippie, and I never got along with the hippies. That's why I had this big impact on Buddhism in the few years I was doing it, And then, as you know, on my YouTube channel, you can see in the years since that I took it another direction. But sure, the book I'm writing right now, there are two sources of inspiration for it, and they know it. One is Voltaire. I've talked about that in the channel before. I read Voltaire and thought, well, I can do better than this. It's a negative inspiration. But the other is there's this younger YouTuber, Oliver Shields. And I've said this to him before. I said, look, I'm writing this book for you. I'm writing it for any young men like you. And, the style and substance of the book, it's really aware there are these younger intellectuals who are going to learn something about the meaning of life from me. I'm not going to learn everything. I don't ask all the right questions, and I don't give you all the right answers. I'm not claiming this has a kind of biblical Quality. It's not supposed to be a totally exhaustive examination of these things. But I know I can set this down in a way that's gonna benefit other people, and people will react to it, and some people react to it negatively, and some people take inspiration from it, take it another direction. But for me, now I'm doing the final rereading, revisions, and editing. For me, the least interesting parts of the book are exactly the part where I'm really speaking to a younger reader. For me, it would be a more interesting book if it was one cynical middle-aged man just writing about politics and philosophy and history for other cynical middle-aged men, but it's not. Some passages of it are at that level, but some of them are really breaking it down and teaching it to someone. And by the way, guys, obviously you could be 45 and you're new to this game, so no, look, I'm really aware of that. I'm really aware that that's the big positive impact this YouTube channel has on people's lives, and them that have ears to hear, let it hear.
Yeah.
But here's what I think is significant. It comes back to the topic of this video. Okay. This is exactly the same discourse that you see people stumbling through on Reddit /r/Forever Alone. You have all these people who say they can't fit into the expectations their society put down for them. They can't fit into the expectations their parents set down for them. They maybe can't fit into the expectations that Tumblr or Tinder, the dating apps like this have set down for them. They're like, okay, they can't live up to this, this, and this. So what are they going to do for the rest of their lives? What is the meaning of life? And, the conclusion they all come to, it's a generalization, but still, I think it's valid. The conclusion they'll come to again and again is that they have to figure out how to live a meaningful life on their own terms for their own reasons. They have to start living a life that they will be happy with no validation from anyone else, no friendship from anyone else, no encouragement from anyone else, maybe only negative feedback from anyone else. They have to live the way an atheist lives in a 99% Muslim society. They have to live with some sense of real commitment to, and sense of reward coming from what it is they're devoting their time to. And for some people, yes, that's going to be research into the cure for cancer. It's going to be something that's obviously rewarding in some way. For most people, it's not going to be the cure for cancer. And I'm interested, many of them, this is kind of pathetic, but many of them, they talk about using steroids. They've decided to become really muscular, and they feel, and again, you don't know what they look like, but they're people who say things like they're forever alone. They've never been hugged or kissed. They've never even had a simple relationship on that level that wasn't consummated. And, now their decision is to devote their time to lifting weights and using steroids. Other people, it becomes the stock market or something. But, they're groping around in the darkness for a more meaningful life, and for a life that's so meaningful that this crippling awareness that they're forever alone is relativized by it. It becomes a relatively unimportant problem.
Yeah. I think, I know this is maybe not that deep or meaningful of an example, but we do see plenty of YouTube channels, just a variety of topics you'll find on YouTube, people who are really interested in a subject, and they make an entire YouTube channel just devoted to what pens they use or what pencils they use. People who we've been looking into joystick, like people making
joystick modifications,
custom.
But even the study with me channels, I think, too, and stuff.
So you find people that
obsessively studying on camera.
They're interested in these subjects, and they even are so passionate about them that they share it on YouTube, and they don't care if they only get 10 views or whatever. You can stumble upon these channels that are, not in it for fame or fortune or glory. So I know it's a kind of small example. It's not it's not finding the cure for cancer.
Right.
It's not even something like working as a dentist, like you said. It's just, eventually you do have to get comfortable with finding what it is that you're okay with doing, even if you are doing it alone.
Well, and let's make this explicit. In our century, you're never going to be handed that meaningful life by an institution, right? Like, if you think the solution to your problems is studying philosophy at a university, fucking shoot yourself. Like, are you fucking kidding me? You might as well commit suicide now. If you think you're going to find the meaning of life in the academic study of philosophy at a university, homie, it's over for you. You've got to do it yourself. But like more broadly, a lot of people in some other century, people used to go to a Buddhist monastery to try to have the meaning of life. People used to go to a university, the ancient University of Toledo. People used to get higher levels of formal education. The classic, gentleman's university in liberal arts and to provide the study of classics for many centuries. You've now read some of those books. You know how meaningful they are. Appian and Thucydides and everything else. There were gentlemen of all ages who decided to take the time and take their money and go and learn the classics and go get an introduction to the thought of ancient Greece and Rome. There was a time when there was some kind of institution people believed in as helping you graduate to a more meaningful life. And I don't just mean graduation like getting a certificate or a credential. There was a time when people believed in institutions, and maybe some of them were real. Today, do you want to be an actor? Nobody in their right fucking mind will tell you to go to university and study acting. Are you kidding me? In the year 2022, you might as well kill yourself. If you think you're going to fucking learn to act, going to university and enrolling in an acting major, you are fucking living in the wrong century. You're not going to learn jack shit. You're going to learn how to be $50,000 in debt. You are going to learn nothing. You'd be better off learning how to act by joining the army. Be in the Marine Corps for a couple of years, practice acting in the shower. You know what I mean? I'm saying this like it's a fucking joke. It's no joke. Like the extent to which people are groping around in the darkness for a meaningful life, the extent to which people are seeking out friendships, trying not to be alone, and that they have to go through that process alone. It's them sitting there with Google. I mean, these are all totally different examples, but do you want to be an actor? Do you want to be a stand-up comedian? What percentage of stand-up comedians studied comedy in university? Do you want to do a news and politics show on YouTube? What's the preparation for that? Is that a university? Sorry, I know these are kind of funny, random examples. We wanted to go into baking. We were so fucking stupid. We thought the way to do that was to enroll in a university where you study baking. The low tide of formal education, the disillusionment with and the discrediting of educational institutions and formal ways of progressing towards a meaningful life, whether that be secular education or religious. Because again, also going to a Buddhist monastery is discredited. Yeah, go to the Shaolin temple, knock yourself the fuck out. You might as well go to Disneyland. All that shit is like going to Disneyland. It really is. University is Disneyland. Year 2022, university is fucking Disneyland.
Yeah, man, it's so true. At least in the United States.
So it's on you. If you want a meaningful life, if you don't want to be forever alone, it's on you.
I'm sorry, I find that really funny.
I know. It's tragic, but yeah.
Yeah. It's delivering you.
I've got
experience.
I've got a friend who teaches German at a university, and ever so often she jokes with me about what's going on with her students and in these classes. This is in the United States of America. People are paying $100,000 to spend 3 hours a week in a classroom studying German. They're learning, like, I'm sorry, but if you want to learn German, like you would save money. You could go to Germany and live in a whorehouse. You could live in a brothel in Germany, and it would cost you less money than going to University of the United States of America, and you would come out completely fucking fluent in German. Like the inefficient. Like to say the education in the United States of America is inefficient is an insult to efficiency, right? It's so totally counterproductive. If you want to learn to speak German, you can go to Germany and join the army. Something. You go to Germany and get a job digging ditches. But yeah, you can live in a fucking brothel. You'll come back fluent in German, Like there's so many ways you can learn German, and like this is not one of them. So no, like, but those are skills that are tangible and testable, like how well you speak German. You know what I mean? Like when we're getting into the intangibles, when we're getting into having a meaningful life, and that's why I'm using things like acting or the creative arts. But we can talk about anything else. The extent to which it's on you. If you go to university, you got to bring the meaningful life with you. You can't find it there. That is a new challenge in our era. Of course, we didn't invent it. But yeah, in prior centuries, and many of us, our parents and grandparents, will have that attitude that there's some institution you can sign up for. There's some credential. There's some form of matriculation or graduation you can go through that's going to help you out that way. And today, there is nothing. I mean, what the fuck is the point of going to university? Your professors are all middle-aged alcoholics who are taking Prozac. Like all you're seeing is like the process of fucking degeneration for these nebbishes with PhDs who are in positions of authority, and half of them are communists. And like 25% of them are insane Christian fundamentalists. Like, oh, if you don't want to go to the communist university, oh, have a great time at the fucking Mormon university. Have a great time at Sister Mary's Catholic buttfuck university. Like, it gets worse. The left-wing universities are bad. The right-wing universities are worse. So, but,
Your perspective has really changed. Like, YouTube video used to say, don't drop out of college to go to Thailand.
Right.
Yeah, no.
Durian Ryder was not wrong about everything.
Yeah.
What can I tell you? But yeah, it's way harder. The challenge is way worse in accepting that it's all on you. And I think the good news, there's a positive, liberating aspect to it. Like right now, so we're moving to Los Angeles. Does anyone here want to be an actor? Does anyone here want to be a comedian? Hit me up. We can work, like really, you and me, we can do it. Like there's something liberating to saying, hey, look, do you want to get involved in news and politics? Well, I can do a news and politics show. We can work together. Like any of you in the audience, hit me up. Let's try to make it happen. Maybe it won't work out. Maybe we'll hate each other. Whatever. No false promises here. But there's something liberating about taking responsibility for that stuff and feeling like, hey, it's on me. You know what I mean? Now, if you want to be a dentist, you got to go to dental school. Not everything is like that, but that's so many of these horizons in life. You want to be a sculptor, you want to be a painter, you want to be a stand-up comedian, you want to be an actor, you want to be a writer, whether that's a screenwriter or write a book or something, that oh, wow, okay, it's all on you. And there's something terrifying in the fact that getting a degree in English literature will not prepare you to be a successful author in any way whatsoever. I mean, you learned more about how to write an essay with me. You learned how to improve your life with me than you did in taking that degree. So yeah, there's something liberating about it, but there's also something horrifying about it. And it relates to this big issue of we looked at the possibility of Melissa going to business school, right? And getting an MBA. And like, it was hilarious. Most of the websites, most of the pamphlets for these business schools, but like the main thing they're selling you is that you won't be alone. You'll have friends, you'll have colleagues, you'll have connections.
Yeah, you'll make networking
connections that'll change the rest of your life. That's
sure. And
like, do you want to put that in a contract, homie? Because I can go to university, and do you think I'll have one friend? Do you think I'll have one colleague? Really? Like, you aren't promising me shit. What the fuck? I can study at the University of Toronto for 5 years and never make a single friend or colleague. I can study at University of Victoria for 5 years. Are you kidding me? And I can be the most charismatic, most brilliant person in every fucking class I enroll in. These are small classes. I don't have much. It's a couple of my professors still talk to me to this day. When I was in that class for creative writing, I was the most brilliant creative writer in that class. Let me tell you, I'm not saying every year. The guy could have had other classes, other brilliant people, but no, the competition isn't that great. And I'm one of the most memorable people for that professor, and he still remembers me and he still talks to me. You know what I mean? I do. So that happens. But no, so do you think? So that creative writing class, all the time, I was talking to the professor, we were doing Q&A, but like he really appreciated me as a colleague. Do you think one fucking person in that class wanted to be my friend? Do you think I have one friend today, other than the professor, who still talks to me? Do you think one of them was interested in reading my work or reading my... Do you think any of them wanted to be my colleague? Do you think any of them thought, this guy is talented and he has a background in the publishing industry, which I do. I should go into business with this guy. This guy, we could go together into the publishing industry, whether as a writer or an editor or the actual publisher. Not one fucking person, all right? And I can say this about Buddhist studies. Yeah, I have a lot of experience being the most brilliant person in the room in Buddhist studies context. You know what I mean? Not fucking one person. So, but all these institutions want to sell you that lie. Sign up now and you're going to have friends for life. And people are willing to pay. Do you know how much people pay for a fucking MBA, Ronald? Do you have any fucking idea? People will spend more than $100,000 to get an MBA. And sure, this is a huge part of it. It is partly about being #forever alone.
That's right.
You got anything to add? You got anything to take away?
I think that's a great place to end it.
That's a wrap.